Wilson takes off. And the freshman gets the corner. It's a foot race. Knocked out at the one. Now you see the talents.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Feely in motion. Got a man down the sidelines. It's him, Toafili, and he is off. One man to beat, cuts it back, and brought down to the 20-yard line by Sheridan Jones. They're going to say touchdown. He landed on somebody. Toafili with a magic act, and they're calling it a touchdown.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Here's Edwards with a lay. Donovan Edwards down the sideline. Gets past Ransom. Donovan Edwards. Touchdown, Michigan, the Don.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Looking for an option to the end zone. He goes. Touchdown, Canes. Jacoby George.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
This time in the shotgun. Play fake. Aller to the end zone. Touchdown. Penn State. Khalil Dinkins.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
They're going to go Wildcat and snap it directly to Mappa. He tries the right-hand side. He finds Painter. That's a Clemson touchdown.
Now here's David Smoke, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoke.
Here we go, 365 Sports on this Tuesday afternoon. Hope you've had a good day and hope you will give us all 3 hours if you can. Whatever time you give us, it will be great. David Smoke, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoke. We are 365 Sports every afternoon from 3 until 6. So here's a note. I saw this from Mike Craven, who writes for Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine, and it made me think, and we've seen this before, and this is a lazy narrative. Let him finish his thought here. Talking Big 12 football reveals the ball knowers from the ball pretenders. And he goes on to talk about how the conference in some ways is still referred to as a pass-happy conference without any defense, and using the phrase basketball on grass, track meet, etc., which is so far from what they've become because of a lot of the different coaches who have entered this conference and the way the styles of teams. There are still some that are wide open. We get that. But I thought that was a great point by Mike Craven.
Well, you know, it's one of those things that there was a time, yes, where everybody but a couple schools were wide open offenses. But now, I mean, you look at the Big 12 conference, and I don't think you can paint this conference with this is how everything works brush, right? So, or how everybody does things, because it's so big now. Utah's not a spread team. Arizona State don't really know. I mean, Kansas and Kansas State aren't spread teams. Kansas is a wide zone. Kansas State's not a spread. Oklahoma State kind of is. TCU is. Tech is. UCF is Gus Malzahn's thing, so that's not really basketball on grass. I've never thought of it that way. I mean, that's kind of an old it's an SEC offense. West Virginia's not that way. Iowa State's certainly not. Willie Fritz is not. Colorado is. Cincinnati's not. BYU's not. Baylor is again. So, everybody's kind of different in the league, which is part of the reason why it's going to be so damn challenging for anybody, because you're not facing the same game plans every single week like maybe you were back in the 2010s.
Yeah, this is actually a different Mike Craven tweet than the one I was expecting. He had another one that was talking about, I guess he had, you come across whoever you come across on Twitter, and he was talking about, like, what happened to the game I love when instead of just talking trash, like, you're comparing TV ratings. And I've foreshadowed this. You can go back to like 2 years ago when I started talking about TV ratings and what I said was going to happen, right? And like we're seeing it happen in real time. It's just, I could see that coming when that became kind of another subtopic that caught a little bit of fire. So that's where I thought you were going to go, and that in itself is an interesting conversation. So in regards to this one in particular, yeah, I mean, quite frankly, if there's anybody still saying that in 2024, you need to cut off like them as a source or a faucet of college football knowledge for you when it comes to the Big 12. Like they need to be banned, unfollowed, whatever, because that hasn't been the case for several years now. Like when that was the case and that was at its peak, do y'all realize that was a decade ago?
Yep.
That was a decade ago.
Yep.
That was a decade ago that we were talking about the track on, the football field and Art Briles' offenses at Baylor and what TCU was doing with Trayvon Boykin and that whole crew of folks.
Casey Paha, yeah.
That was 10 years ago. Texas Tech, they're still a mold of themselves in some ways, but when they were at like their peak, Cliff Kingsbury, that was 10 years ago. It hasn't been that way for a really long time. Yeah, there's been teams here and there that continue to do it or have incorporated it, have done it to some extent, but I'd say for the past 2 or 3 years, it's been a very run-heavy conference, defensive, and the only other part to that you didn't mention was, they don't play defense either. It's track on the football field, and they don't play defense. I guess the defensive thing's gone away, but the idea that, it's just everybody scores 60, like when Geno was at West Virginia taking on, Briles and RG3 and these crazy, types of 60-plus point offenses. We'll see some teams post 60, like, maybe more than once this season. Not likely in the conference, but in the non-conference and whatnot. But, like, the days of that being commonplace week in and week out in multiple games across, that's been dead for 10 years. I mean, it maybe not quite 10, but close to 10 years. So anybody that's still saying that at this point have absolutely no idea what they're talking about.
Well, it's also a conference. Remember when we showed the Doak Walker list that there are a chunk of running backs up for that. There were running backs that were up for that award too, but you're right. This is a different personality of a conference.
Well, part of the thing that's happened is the advent of the 3-3-5 defense. That wasn't a defense that everybody was running. West Virginia started running it. Other people.
Iowa State,
West Virginia. Iowa State started running it.
That's who everybody has copied basically is defending it.
Yeah, Iowa State started running the 3-3-5, and so the spreads, even the ones that were the Texas Tech, Zach Kigley types offenses, have had to morph to deal with that because now you always have 5 defensive backs in the field. You've got a third linebacker that's really a safety, so you're kind of playing dime all the time. And even then, it gives you a lot of different flexibility. So I think that people who haven't noticed that part of it, especially noticed that outside of Texas's really high-flying offense last year that wound up winning the conference and now they're on to the SEC. But, Baylor and Oklahoma State, when they played, that was a slobber knocker offensive game. It wasn't like, this old school that it would have been Braden Whedon versus Bryce Petty.
Wait a minute. You guys think that Texas is wide open?
Well, I mean, like, they had huge offensive numbers, but they weren't.
Yeah, because I don't think of them as an air raid team.
No, they're not air raid, but they're spread, and you can, incorporate other like when the people that were talking about the Big 12, that was when the conference was like basically like 7 of the 12 were air raid systems.
Yeah, no, I get it.
So that's not what it is now, and that's not what it's been for a while. Like since Briles got fired and TCU had some changeover from their like. We're not in 2014. That's the point. Yeah. And so, a lot has shifted, and some of that stayed, but a lot of it got handled by the Iowa States of the world, making changes on defense that now I think every single school has adapted in some way. I know Baylor did. Under Matt Rule, they started copying what Iowa State was doing to some extent. Who did we talk to at Big 12 Media Days? They said it was one of the new schools. They were like, well, we've been looking – this thing was like Cincinnati's like, well, we've been looking at the 3-3-5. It's like, yeah, that's what everybody does in the Big 12 because that's what started working, and everybody's kind of copied that to the point of, well, now you can't do all that the same way, and so now we're going to shift a little bit more towards being run-heavy. And I think that's bared out to where, it's been much more of a defensive conference and a running conference with a sprinkling of the other stuff too. But, I think that's also there's been no Patrick Mahomes or Bryce Petty or Trayvon Boykin or the litany of quarterbacks that were kind of tearing it up and the combinations of receivers and QBs that you had back. It's just a different game than it was. And so, yeah, like that, if that comment's still going around, I think that tells you all you need to know. And if you hear the other side of that, which thankfully Mike didn't mention, but like, yeah, they don't play defense in the Big 12. I don't think that's been the case for at least 3 or 4 years now at this point either. So, yeah, that's an easy tactic to spot who doesn't really know what they're talking about.
Craig, this is a personal note that you'll remember. Back in this is when that 3-3-5 really started to have some traction. Even back in the early 2000s, when Reggie McNeil was at Lufkin High School, and they used to throw that deep fade all the time. Who was the quarterback from Lufkin, Paul, that came here to Baylor? Parks, right?
Yeah, Terrence Parks.
Terrence Parks. And they used to just throw that fade, and what happened is Lee High School started to play the 3-3-5, and it started to frustrate that offense, and that was 20 years ago, but that's when I first really saw any kind of impact of what it could do. Doesn't mean you're still going to stop an offense with those type of weapons, but I remember when Randy Huffstickler and Jay Law, high school coaches, noticed that it was creating a little bit of a logjam for those offenses back then.
Yeah, and you know, we've had 2 decades plus now of spread in Texas high school football, and all levels of eyes having seen it to some degree, even some of the, you know, tentacles reaching the NFL. And so there's been 2 decades to try and thwart it and fend it off, and there's been some cases where it's been effective, like Iowa State, and that's why so many people have copied what they've done, you know, by the years. But, yeah, I think some of it, too, is just the talent level, the coaching turnover for sure. I mean, like I mentioned Texas Tech. Joey McGuire's not a big air raid, like throw it all over the field type. He wants to run the football, you know, and that wasn't always the case at Tech, where Patrick Mahomes wasn't getting to a bowl game, but he was damn sure throwing it 60 times per game. You know, like that's not where we have been for quite a while now. It makes me look back on it a little bit fondly, because those were games that could really turn into headaches if you loved any kind of defense, but the offenses were incredible. I mean, like
Timothy Green, you're right. Timothy Green, West Virginia started that 3-3-5 themselves in 05. Geno Smith never played against RG3. However, we did score that 70-63.
That's what I was thinking of,
against Baylor. That was in 2012. Was Nick Florence.
Yeah, I didn't think it was RG3 when I said that. I knew it was in the ballpark. But, yeah, like that's the game people refer to. And, look, if whoever wants credit for it, I mean, I just know that Iowa State's the one here recently that, going back to Matt Rule when he was here, which is now like 6-7 years ago.
He's been gone
He was talking about
2000.
Matt Campbell, the Media Days interview with, I think it was Satterfield, was talking about Matt Campbell and Iowa State. But, yeah, West Virginia deserves some credit, and on both ends of the spectrum, the offensive side of this and the defensive side of this.
Here are some other stories that we'll kind of chip away at. We do have a nice guest list, including Carter Carls, who covers A&M on the running back room, along with Brian Haydad, who covers Mississippi State. Tim Brando today joins us on the show. Ari Temkin from Big 12 Radio, and John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist. The battle for the Iron Skillet, TCU and SMU, that has been a kick time that is officially there now. It's going to be 3 o'clock. They will play September 21st on the CW Network. And, of course, we're on the CW Network with our show at night when it's a replay. But that's TCU and SMU, 3 o'clock on September 21st.
I mean, everybody's making the CW jokes now. You almost can't even do it. It's too low-hanging fruit to talk about how that comes on, you know, in between the Gilmore Girls and, you know, whatever else. Like, every joke's made every time the CW is brought up now. But, shoot, for all we know, Big 12 might occupy some territory on that network at some point in time, or any other conference, because they're clearly in the sports game. And so, hey, if you're those involved, I'm really interested to see what that product looks like. CW just went and got WWE NXT. They're going to debut that this fall, so they're investing. And I think that's a platform that you look at that maybe invests a little bit further if this goes well. So that's something to note for, I think, all college programs. And that's going to be an interesting game this year. I mean, SMU's obviously feeling themselves, and rightfully so, moving into the ACC. They've got a good team. And TCU, there's no love lost there. They expect to be a pretty good team, and those have been some competitive, fun games. So I think that ought to be I don't know how many people are going to watch it, but I think that ought to be a hell of an entertaining game.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the CW, look, it's in 90% or more of the markets in the country. There's a CW, and people, because they're not nerds like me, don't know this, but Smokey, you remember, because you were in TV when people having cable was kind of a 50-50 deal, but you probably had in most markets, you had a CBS, ABC, NBC, and then randomly there was like a Fox, and Fox was really not much, like for a while, like in the late 80s, early 90s, it started to pick up because they had The Simpsons and Married with Children. They started like investing in it. Rupert Murdoch obviously started that company.
I had never heard of Fox until they bought the NFL.
But then they got the NFL and they took off. Well, the CW was kind of like that. And like the shows that were on the CW were mostly for comic book nerds and teen girls. And they've done that for a long time. They sold to a new company. The new company says, well, we can't make money this way. So how do you make money in the 2020s? Well, you put on live sports. So what can we buy? And they went out and they got Live Golf, and then they got some college football, and then they got some more college football, and now they've got wrestling. So it's only going to grow. I think,
What is one of the things that we kept being told by, I forgot who it was, might have been even our good friend Jim in
North Carolina, yeah. Why are we blanking on his name?
Jim Williams, I'm sorry,
you.
who brought up the fact that live programming, no matter what anyone wants to say, is a drug for all the networks. You need it, and that was one of the things that really, in the end, was a big deal for the Big 12.
Yeah, I think live sports is live sports, and there's not enough to quench the appetite. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw this when I was off. Like, I don't know how much I'll talk Olympics, but I watched a ton of it because I had time to. And ratings from some of the day baseball games and some of the other events, like there's now the talk is, should we move more stuff to weekdays, like sports events? Should we move more stuff to weekdays? That's what's now being looked at by some of the networks after the success of the Olympics and just some other like baseball games and things that have aired and had pretty WNBA games that have aired during the daytime. I've had good ratings. So, yeah, the CW was easy to make fun of because I'm sure there's a Pac-12 fan watching this somewhere going, wait a second, y'all poo-pooed all over the CW and all that. I mean, as an extra element to what you already have, if you already have a deal with ESPN or, that's same thing, or whatever your arrangement is, I don't think you'd want it to be your main spot. But, yeah, as an accompaniment to a deal or as an add-on, then, yeah, I think that's a fine network for some games to be played, and I think that'll be an interesting spot to see how they cover it this year. So, yeah, I don't think that's the last we've heard of the CW in college football by any means.
All right, let's go to some more stories today. This young man, Daniel Jackson, wide receiver at Iowa State, is out for the year with a leg injury. I don't know if you guys know his story. He's like right there in the depth chart as their third or fourth guy. He is the one that when he was in high school had a massive car accident when he was driving 70 miles an hour, had his navel cavity broken, and basically almost
his nasal cavity.
That's what I said.
You said navel.
You said navel cavity.
Well, no, not the one in your stomach. The nasal cavity broken, and he came back from near death. I mean, seriously, it was a bad deal. And but he's out for the year. That's tough news for Iowa State when it comes to their wide receiving corps. They have some good ones, Noel and a few others that are all really, really good.
Yeah, Jalen Noel is a really good player, and that room is solid. I don't think, statistically this is a huge loss for them, but he did have his best year last year, and so that's really unfortunate. Regardless of what he did previously, that's just unfortunate in general. That's like the fifth or sixth season-ending injury that I've heard about in the last couple of weeks already. And so, yeah, I hate that for Daniel Jackson, and, yeah, I hate that for Iowa State.
We'll go to some others here in a moment. That was that. Let's get to some things from Brett McMurphy. When yesterday's Associated Press preseason top 25 poll came out, last night he went like Adderall with these thoughts. Which top 10 team will finish unranked every year for the past 21 years except 2019? There has been at least one preseason top 10 team that finished not out of the top 10, finished out of the poll, including last year, USC, with Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley. Who will it be possibly this year?
At first glance, that's a really tough question because you look at the current top 10 and there's not a lot of just like, oh, yeah, there's the G5 they gave a little bit too much credit to or something along those lines. I'm kind of leaning towards Michigan. Although I think they're going to be pretty solid, even though you've lost J.J. McCarty, and we don't know about Orji and how all that's going to look and everything, but I kind of lean them like that, plus the coaching change, just losing some big-time players, having the great run that you did last year. But I could be convinced that it's Penn State. I think that's where my eyes also went as well, was Penn State. Beyond that, I do wonder about FSU having a hangover just from last year and losing a lot of talent, but I feel like they have a manageable conference, and Mike Norvell is a really good coach because they're sitting there right there at 10. Beyond those two, though, like I'd expect – I don't feel confident in saying that any of those teams are like, yeah, I can see them falling out of the top 10, but I could see it with Penn State and Michigan potentially.
Yeah, I agree with you. Look, you could convince me that Florida State could again have a hangover and hit the wall, and they've got a fairly decent schedule when you've got Memphis and SMU and Clemson, Miami, Notre Dame in Florida on it, and we don't know how good Florida is going to be, but it's still a rivalry game. But I just think that they're good enough to where they won't fall out. Like they may not be in the playoff, but I don't think they'll fall out of the top 25. But Notre Dame, Penn State, and Michigan, and even Notre Dame doesn't have a schedule that's tough enough outside of catastrophe for me to think they would fall out of the top 25.
Yeah, and I was sitting here thinking about it as the top 10. Now that you're saying that, it's like, oh, yeah, his tweet said top 25. So top 25.
Completely unranked.
Yeah, no.
From top 10 out of the top 25 completely.
I think my answer's the same.
Yeah,
but
Penn State and Michigan to me would be the most. But then again, like Penn State's schedule, are you going to lose that many games when
they have right now on their schedule ranked teams? Again, that doesn't mean anything until they start to play games. They play USC and Ohio State are the only ranked teams. Now, they open up with West Virginia. We wonder how that goes, but they have two ranked teams compared to some who have 6, 5, a bunch have 6.
Yeah.
Ranked teams.
And I'll tell you about West Virginia, in my opinion, and I hope this isn't just Big 12 bias, and our West Virginia friends haven't put a worm in our brain. But if I had an AP vote, I would have given West Virginia one before USC right now.
Okay,
because I know more about them.
I would for sure. I feel much better about West Virginia than I do about USC. I do think that West Virginia fans, God love them, have tried to plant those thoughts and have been very vocal about the disrespect they're getting this preseason.
Nothing like when they say disrespect, it's completely almost like a complete flip of compared to last year's disrespect. They're getting.
Yeah, no, I do think that they are in a weird spot where people are putting their top 25 polls together, and West Virginia is not necessarily an automatic Big 12 top 5. And so if they're not a Big 12 top 5 in people's minds because you think Kansas is and Kansas State's better and you think Utah's better and you think Arizona's better, whoever, then there's not much room for you to be in a top 25. Like if you're the 6th best Big 12 team, you're probably not in the top 25, just the way that it's going to start out at least. So, yeah, I think you're right that it's probably a bit overblown, but it is a total reversal from last year where it was like, God, are we about to tear this whole thing down and we better win enough games? And now it's like, why are we not in the top 25 after the year? And so, yeah, I'm very curious about them and what they actually turn into, because it could be way this direction or way the other direction. I have no idea.
It's every year, 21 years except 2019. Here's some more. Here are the coaches that have been on the unranked list of teams started ranked in the top 10 who did not finish ranked, including Riley, Aranda, Venables, his first year, I believe, Mac Brown, Dan Campbell. Remember, they were coming off that. Matt Campbell. Boy, I'm with names today. There's Franklin at Penn State, Cristobal at Oregon, Malzahn twice at Auburn, Kelly at Notre Dame, and then Lane Kiffin at USC in 2012. So those are the coaches who had a team in the top 10. They didn't rank them in the top 10, but they were ranked in the top 10 who finished unranked at the end of the season. Also, Brett McMurphy. This is another one. Here's teams that started unranked that ended up in the top 10. Last year, it was Missouri. There has been at least one team every year for 30 years, except 11 and 20 COVID year, which started unranked, and they did the opposite. Ended up in the top 10. Last year, Missouri ranked at the end of the year number 8.
Yeah, Missouri was the story of the year out of nowhere to me, because everybody like, okay, well, Mizzou's kind of Mizzou. And then from that, from the beginning of the season on, you kind of thought like, oh, this may be a little bit different. Who's this Brady Cook? Man, Luther Burden, he really is that good, And then they, Cody Schrader had an unbelievable year, kind of out of nowhere. So yeah, it was unbelievable. So it was great. Yeah, that's who they were.
As far as who could possibly do that this year, I mean, just looking at some of the others receiving votes: Louisville, Vautech, Boise State, SMU, Iowa State. Go a little ways, West Virginia got 17 votes. Memphis, so I could see one of those schools doing that.
In the top 10?
Yeah, like if Memphis with their road compared to others, if they actually turn out to be as good as believed, then they could be that top G5 qualifier.
Yeah, they would be a top 5, but they would have to basically run the table to be in the top 10. We're not talking ranked. We're talking in the top 10.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying if there's possibilities there, like that's a better bet than thinking that I don't know, that Louisville's going to end up in the top 10, in my opinion. But, I mean, there's always the chance, obviously, as you showed with history there. But, yeah, I think that's possible again this year. That's still quite a feat. I mean,
it's crazy.
I'm looking at, like, Nebraska is getting votes, and I guess I could see it. But, man, it's really hard in the Big Ten this year. Like, they'd have to be really good. Same with Wisconsin. So, yeah, I think it's easier if it's a Boise State or someone like that. But there's some interesting candidates.
Georgia, number 1, right? Makes a lot of sense. I don't think anyone was surprised with that. 18 of the last 20 Associated Press preseason number 1 ranked teams did not. 18 of the last 20 did not win the national title, including Georgia a year ago. Alabama and USC overcame the preseason number 1 jinx, and USC had that great run that, in fact, was ended in 2005 by Vince Young and company. These trends are crazy. And Brett, I sent him a text. I said, man, you are full of some great nuggets today. And so that would be, and okay, 18 of the last 20, the number 1 ranked team, did not win the national title. It's hard, first of all, but you would think it would be more than just 2 of the last 20.
Mm-hmm. Well, if Georgia does it, they'll be the greatest team of all time.
I mean, absolutely.
I don't know why they wouldn't be, and the whole they weren't undefeated. That's not going to fly the same way anymore because you're playing in a totally different game under totally different rules in a totally different era with a totally different setup. So, yeah, they didn't win all 12 regular season games and then win their bowl game that had no ties to anything. They had to win most of their games during the regular season, like 10 of them at worst, and then maybe 9, it's the SEC, and then go win 4 more games against top 12 teams. I mean, that's whoever does that is going to be a pretty special group.
UT parking, by the way, on teams that may not be ranked that could end up in the top 10. He mentioned Georgia Tech and Virginia Tech. The couple of teams to think about in the ACC.
Yeah, the ACC.
TCU and Tech.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of teams that aren't in that top 25. So, yeah, absolutely. I can see TCU doing that. If they turn out to be as good as Sonny Dykes seems to think that they could be, if Josh Hoover's really that guy and they're better defensively. So, yeah, I mean, I think all those teams you mentioned are certainly in the mix.
All right, here's another note. Ohio State, ranked number 2. It's the 18th time in their school history that they've been ranked number 2 in the preseason poll. 6th time in the last 9 years. They've never won the national title when they started the season ranked number 1 or number 2.
Huh.
Again, it's hard.
Well, yeah, but again, it's different now. It's different because you're
you would think these things are going to be harder to do.
Yeah,
right?
It's going to be harder, or like it's not as. Part of the reason you don't win a national title when you start the season ranked number 2 is you get upset and you have a precipitous drop. Well, now you'll still be able to get in the playoff, provided that doesn't continue to happen.
Well, if you play a good team early,
okay. I'll just put it this way, Smokey, just to tease you because I want to put it in your brain. But say Ohio State is rolling along, and then they play that game against Nebraska, and Nebraska decides, well, this is the time we're going to look like we've developed, and they beat them. Well, in the past, that number 2 Ohio State team would have dropped precipitously, and that game would have followed them around all year long. But if they lose to Nebraska now, And
could you have just used another example?
no, I wanted to mess with you. And then go through the rest of the season, everything's fine. Even if they lost in the Big Ten title game, they're going to be 10-2 and. Or
they would be 11-2.
11-2. They're gonna be 11-2 and in the playoff. So what does it matter that you had that other one and you dropped from 2 to 8? Because 8's still fine. As opposed to we're stuck at number 8. All of our dreams are crushed. That's over.
Yep. All right, one more. Texas at number 4, ranked in the top 5 for the first time since the year after they lost to Alabama in the national championship game. When the Longhorns started number 5, they finished unranked in 2010. Now, having said that, there are years they've started inside the top 5 and finished, and in fact played really, really well and won a national title. But at number 4, the highest they've been since 2010, that was the Garrett Gilbert year that didn't go very well. And Texas ended up being unranked. Craig, you brought up some injuries, and this is UT has lost another running back. Freshman Christian Clark has sustained what is believed to be a serious lower leg injury. Not an ACL. This is from Anwar, but considering now moving yet another receiver into the running back room. And so, yeah, they had C.J. Baxter and now Christian Clark. And so 2 of their top, I think, 3 or 4 running backs are now out for one out for the year, 1 for an extended period of time. Oklahoma wide receiver Jaden Gibson out for the rest of the year. He is out. That was a story from Parker Thune. He is now out. Another player we mentioned earlier, the Iowa State wide receiver. So there's a lot of attrition already going on here in just the month of August.
Yeah, there is. I mean, that's really unfortunate that guys are getting this close and then unable to make it to the start of the season just a couple of weeks away. That really sucks. Jaden Gibson had a really productive year last year, and was a guy who I think you had some pretty good and high hopes for entering this season after not having a crazy amount of yards, but had a handful of touchdowns. He started the bowl game against Arizona. So, I mean, ended on – they didn't end on a high note as a team, certainly, but ended with the start in that game. And, I think, just expected more of that from Jaden Gibson. So that's tough. And then with UT and that running back room, when you start talking about having to move guys around, you mentioned Darian Gullett yesterday, switching over from defense potentially. That's rough. And especially when you walked in, you thought that, if anything, running back's a never-ending strength for Texas. But, 1 or 2 injuries, and that can throw the whole thing for a loop. So I don't think you really want, no matter how talented a true freshman might be, unless it's like Bijan Robinson or Adrian Peterson or something, I think you necessarily want your true freshman back having to get too many carries, but we'll see what is headed Christian Clark's way potentially. But, you got to be careful with that room, because one more injury and you're really up S Creek for Texas.
You're going to have to play some walk-ons.
Yeah, they can't lose Jaden Blue. No matter how much talent, what they have to try to move people around. Let's skip the Utah tight end room, Garrett, for a little bit later in the show. This was the one we saw from a week ago, the Jim Harbaugh note. No longer will be the honorary captain for the game against Fresno State. His mother and father will be there instead. Craig, you were going to add something else?
I wanted to add something to the Texas thing real quick. This is opening the door, though, for Trey Wisner. And so I feel really good about him. I feel absolutely great about him, knowing what we know about him as a player, how silky smooth he is. So I think you're just going to see more Trey Wisner because of some of these injuries, which I think you're going to see some of him anyways because he's just talented. But I do think like a local tie-in a way is this is opening for even more carries for Trey Wisner.
And with that offensive line, they're not perfect, but with that offense being so open and
they're back in mass.
Their offensive line's close.
They're not perfect.
No, but
I'm just saying they have so much space available, and Trey Wisner can run like the wind.
Yeah, so I think for fans of his that this is actually a blessing in disguise potentially, and maybe it doesn't affect that at all, but he's who I think of now because you're getting into that point of the depth chart of like there's only so many options, obviously, when you're moving guys from defense or you're adding a baseball player to the roster and Nick Anderson. And so, that's where we look there. But to Harbaugh, I just wanted to close that.
No, the Harbaugh will no longer be there as an honorary captain for that game. I don't know. They can say whatever they want. It was not a good idea, in my opinion. Even if you love Michigan and you love Harbaugh, that was just not a good idea. And so now it's going to be his parents. He needs to focus on the NFL.
Nick Sanders, Texas running back, not Nick Anderson. Nick Anderson plays for Oklahoma. But yes, with Harbaugh, that is a situation where I can't believe they had the gall to even try to really even test that, but they were clearly testing it and got the response that they probably should have expected to begin with. And yeah, that's not a good idea. That to me is just throwing middle fingers in the face of authority, which I'm not opposed to when it's deserved, but I don't think Michigan deserves to do that. I think Michigan got very lucky that the whole situation turned out the way that it did. So count your blessings rather than trying to take it another step. And so, yeah, I think it's a good idea to not necessarily have Harbaugh involved there.
All right, just a couple other notes. We got a break. Come back with our opening guest. We'll have today at 3:40 with Carter Carls. It's a hard name. He even told me it was, who covers A&M for 247 Sports. Bruce Feldman, Deion Smith, the JUCO product, was at one point set to join LSU, right? Began his career with the Tigers. He is now with Ole Miss and apparently having a spectacular run early on, wowing the coaching staff, including Lane Kiffin.
Well, this is something, and I feel like maybe I'm outside of Mississippi proper. I'm the one who's been ringing this bell for Ole Miss. I kept hearing, well, I don't know about their depth. I don't know about their depth. They've got 10 of the top 25 JUCO prospects on the roster right now. Deion Smith, is that it? Deion Smith being the top one. Getting him was a huge, huge deal. And then across other positions, they've killed it in JUCO. And people have kind of forgotten about that because we're all obsessed with the transfer portal. But you know what the transfer portal was before the transfer portal? It was JUCO. That was what it was. You went and a kid didn't work out at a place and he went to JUCO, or, he had grade issues and he went to JUCO, or, needed to eat a couple of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and he went to JUCO, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, we missed out on this dude. So, that's what it was before. So none of that's really changed as far as the talent that winds up there. That hasn't changed. The same kind of people have the same kind of situations and wind up there. And Lane Kiffin is the one who's using it the most.
Yeah, that's a really talented player that they've finally gotten cleared and can officially, prepare to have on the field, which is great news for Ole Miss and great news for that offense. And I think Jackson Dart's got a lot of fun toys to play with this year, and they certainly went all in budget-wise based on all the moves they've made this offseason. So you talk about a team starting off the top 10, be unranked. I think certainly the Pearls would get clutched, and there would be all sorts of extreme reactions if Georgia somehow wasn't in the top 20. But, if Ole Miss isn't in the top 25 by the end of the year, I think that would be as disastrous as anything, given how much they pushed their chips to the middle of the table this season. So that's another sign of positive talent in their direction, which they had a lot of here over the course of this past year, and all that talent, how that shapes up and actually performs. I think that's one of the more intriguing storylines because they're one of the more interesting teams entering this season because of all they went and did with their personnel. So, yeah, that's another weapon to watch out for if you're the SEC.
We'll discuss the running back room. We mentioned Texas, the running back room with A&M after losing Reuben Owens with Carter Carls. He'll join us in the next segment. We'll get to the Tennessee and the logo on the field being sold at their beautiful stadium. That's a little bit later on in the show. But Carter Carls is next on A&M. This is 365 Sports. Stonewood Dental, specialized in fillings, crowns, sealants, periodontal surgery and therapy, root canals, I know that, IV sedation, extractions, I know that too, fluoride implants, bridges, dentures, partials, treatment of a lot of things. And that's what Dr. Steve Childress and his staff, 5 dentists inside the building, and, of course, their hygienist and many more, the excellent support staff. I have been now going to him since the COVID year and have had a lot of things that have been fixed, had a lot of things that have been, I guess you could say, fixed, and also working on others because he just finally had a come to Jesus with me about my dental work. It wasn't good. I was doing too many bad things. And so he's now got me set up and feeling great. And by the way, you seem like, okay, you brush your teeth, you do flossing, whatever. I used to do all that, and then when I had to go see a dentist for a teeth cleaning, I knew they would find something, and then you try to make up for lost time. It never works that way. It's an everyday process. And Dr. Steve Childress is my dentist. Love what he's done for my dental work. Love what he does for the patients. Stonewood Dental in Robinson, Texas.
Let the journey to financial brilliance begin with Genco's limited time offers. Max your earnings with a Kasasa cash account and get paid monthly with a 4.25 APY. That's $425 annually. Then invest in a 13-month share certificate and earn 4.9 APY. That's $529. Earn cash and outshine the rest. At Genco, we offer you the sun and the moon. Kasasa based on average daily balance of $10,000. Certificate based on $10,000 investment. See GencoFCU.org for details. NCUA.
Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is a premier elite life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Offering over 50 group exercise classes every week, including boot camp, bar, silver sneakers, and 10 cycling classes with morning and evening classes available. New state-of-the-art bikes that allow you to compete against yourself with a screen monitoring your speed, miles, resistance, and power. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, Alex Botch, and Nathan Roach, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow, losing inches in weight the right way. There's a kids club included with your membership, plus sauna and tanning bed. 16 tennis courts, plus a beautiful stadium court, and longtime youth tennis pro Britt Coleman and assistant junior pro Kenna. Adult tennis lessons and clinics with Blake, and the commitment to pickleball with 8 courts and instructor Jody Thurman. Visit the website at wacotennis.com next to Hawaiian Falls on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
365 Sports today with Carter Carls. 247 Sports covers Texas A&M. He joins me. We traded a text or two back and forth because I always want to make sure how to say a name, with mine being Smoke and it's spelled a little bit unique. And Carter had to let me know. Carter, how many people get that wrong, that it's Carl's or not Carell's, or how many people can't say it quickly?
I mean, the success rate has to be below 5%. It's always Carol's, it's Carell's.
Yep.
Hey, it doesn't seem right when it's all spelled out. It shouldn't be Carl's, but it is. So
yeah.
I kind of understand, though.
Well, you do a great job covering A&M. We appreciate your time. Ruben Owens goes down. I know that their overall running back room doesn't seem to be too deep. What's the pecking order now? And secondly, are they in a position where somebody at another position might be an option at running back? Yeah,
pretty thin. You've got 3 scholarship running backs heading into the season as it stands that are healthy, and lasting a whole season, especially in the SEC with 3 guys. You're rolling the dice because you lose one of them, and man, you're kind of in trouble. So yeah, I think that will be something. We haven't seen it yet, but I think that's something that they'll have to think about. Whether it's, hey, let's use a guy in an emergency situation, or hey, let's just get some guys some practice reps at a certain position. And there's certainly a few names you can think about, but right now it's Le'Veon Moss, Jr., who for most of the last season looked like the best running back on the team, but had some injuries that held him back. Amari Daniels actually led the team in rushing last year, started the season pretty well, but kind of faded as it went along, as Moss kind of started to hit his stride, and Owens started to get a couple nice games in there. And then the third guy to know is E.J. Smith, who you've probably heard of a guy named Emmitt Smith before. That is his son, and he comes from Stanford, first-year transfer. And he's a guy who has also had a tough time with injuries in the past, but when healthy, he's been a guy who was good enough to start at Stanford and will certainly push for time at Texas A&M. He's effective as a receiver as well. So, you could see him catching passes. You could see him, in pass, picking up blitzes and pass protection and stuff like that. You could see him in a multitude of ways. But, yeah, really three guys right now. I think they wanted this to be a running back by committee approach this season. And so they're going to lean on all three of those guys. And you certainly can't afford to lose any more guys.
Now, the way I see it with Reuben Owens, he was the one who had the most potential to be the alpha dog back down the line, like if it got to that point. Like he does everything that both the other guys can do. A couple of these things, he kind of does all those things. So now it's back to being committee strictly without maybe the potential for an alpha dog.
I think even if Owens was healthy, it would have been a committee. Talking to Elko and Klein all offseason, they've heavily hinted at the fact that they would be using a committee approach. It's what they did last year under Jimbo Fisher. All three guys, Moss, Owens, and Daniels, had almost the same amount of carries and overall touches. So I think it actually would have still been pretty similar. And you could say 1A, 1B, 1C could have been kind of the deal. Owens, I think he certainly long-term has the potential to be maybe the best guy of the group. But, there were times last year where, he kind of hit that rookie wall, if you will, had some growing pains. I think he has some room to go as far as picking up blitzes and maybe fighting through contact and stuff like that. So I wouldn't say he was going to be the alpha of the group per se, but definitely a big loss, not just because of the potential he had as a former five-star recruit, but also just the depth and what that does to a group where they want to use, multiple guys. So definitely a big loss, but not like they're losing, a Doak Walker Award finalist or anything like that.
So, all right, with Mike Elko, the coach, and what he likes to do, yes, they're going to throw it around. They need to do that as well. But is this just it's never a good year to lose your star running back and then others too, but is this a bad year because of how he likes to play or what?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that traditionally when you've watched a Colin Klein offense, they like to run the football. They like to use multiple tight ends. They like to involve multiple rushers if they can. Obviously at Kansas State, Deuce Vaughn was the guy getting a lot of the carries, but their quarterback ran quite a bit. So you look at their rushing attack the last couple of years, they were one of the best in the country. And I don't know if A&M had the personnel that K-State did to do quite that, but there did seem to be an emphasis on, wanting to run the ball, being more of that methodical offense. I think their limitations at the skill position would probably make them want to be more of that move the chains, be efficient on third down, stay ahead of the chains on first and second down kind of thing, instead of being that, wide open, spread them out, high flying offense. So it does hurt because I think, if you're going to emphasize the run game, if you're going to give 100 carries to three different guys, that's a big chunk of production you're just taking out. And you really are putting a lot on Le'Veon Moss and E.J. Smith, two guys who have had injury problems in the past. You're putting a lot on them as far as staying healthy. And, again, it's a long season. You're going to be banged up and bruised. So maybe a committee approach will help them remain fresh for most of the season. But, again, you're one injury away from being kind of a really tough spot there.
Are any of the freshmen that they have coming in likely to maybe see some more time because of this?
Well, they actually did not sign any running backs in the 2024 class. They only just brought in the one transfer, E.J. Smith. So, only 3 scholarship running backs. But certainly there's a couple guys that you could look at. Terry Bussey's one of them. He was the 5-star athlete out of Timpson, who is kind of your do-it-all guy. I mean, some people think he could be a cornerback. Some people think that he could be a receiver, maybe even running back. And so he might be a guy that you say, hey, we don't long-term think you're going to be a running back, but this is the place that is needed the most. So, let's give you some practice reps there. Could definitely see that. He's someone who is dynamic with the ball in his hands. Based on what I heard from the scrimmage that they had this last Saturday, was that this guy, first scrimmage ever on the team, runs back the opening kickoff for a touchdown. So this is somebody that you give him the ball, he can do stuff with it. I know he's a young freshman, and maybe he's not someone you put in there right away, but I think maybe you think about giving him some practice reps in case you are needed down the line. And, Notre Dame coming up as the first opponent, I don't think you throw someone into a situation like that. But the next week they play McNeese State, and, maybe that's a game where you kind of test out some things and okay, let's give you a couple reps in the third or fourth quarter when it's a blowout. So I would say that he's the one to watch because he can play a lot of different positions for you. And I don't think at corner, if he were to be there this year, I don't think he would see much time.
Terry Bussey, and you may not know this, Carter, because you covered before you were at A&M. Weren't you covering Florida State? Is that right?
I was, yes.
But I have a high school website that has been covering East Texas for a long time, 40 years or so. The website for about 20. Terry Bussey was my back-to-back all East Texas, what I call alpha dog. I mean, like the guy that at Timpson High School, and there's a lot of guys that come out of East Texas like that have done that. And I don't see him anywhere really on the depth chart, but he is dynamic. And one of those things where he could do so many things that you wonder if he could do one thing well, but he can't. And that's a great option. I forgot about Terry Bussey is at least an option for this year, and who knows, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at a guy like that and you think, hey, could this be a Travis Hunter kind of guy where one day he's playing both ways? Or, maybe it just depends on what the need is. If it's, hey, you don't have any corners? Okay, put him at corner. Hey, you don't have any running backs? Okay, put him there. And I think that's kind of what's going on in the mind of this coaching staff right now, I would figure, is, hey, cornerback, they just brought in a ton of transfers. And, it sounded like cornerback was the position they really liked him at long term. But, he's not in the too deep there. So you kind of have to move him around and think about, okay, well, at receiver, do you have enough guys there that kind of, I think they feel good about their top 5 or 6, but after that, you might want to fortify that depth. And then at running back, certainly as well. But we got a chance to watch him yesterday at practice returning kicks, and just a natural as far as his feel for, blockers and his vision and his ability to cut back, and just a really great athlete with the ball in his hands. So I think you got to think about it.
All right, so we know why there's a transition at head coach, because it didn't work out with Jimbo. Despite that, 2020 team, they were pretty darn good during COVID. Yeah. In your opinion, What are the expectations inside the SEC with even two new schools, including A&M, now with their rival with Texas and Oklahoma? What do you think is a successful year for them, or what would be a successful year for them?
Yeah, I think traditionally you look at Texas A&M, and over the last 20 years, it's been a team that hasn't had many 10-win seasons, many 9-win seasons. There's been a lot of 8-4s. There's been a lot of 7-5s. So I think if you can come in here year one and go 9-3, I think you could really sell that. Hey, this is not a rebuild, and this team is poised to crack into the playoff. If you can go 9-3, I don't think 9-3 gets you into the playoff, but it can tell everybody that, hey, this is a team that could contend for a spot in there. A&M fans, they certainly have super high expectations with the amount of money and resources they have. So they may tell you it's playoff or bust with a team that can recruit at a high level like this. But I do think that there is pressure on Mike Elko to win at a pretty high level year one, just because of a couple things. You don't fire Jimbo Fisher and pay him that buyout money to just go 7-6, right? You don't do that just to be right where you were. And so you got to show that you can be better than, they were last year, number one. And then number two, this is a highly favorable schedule compared to most years in the SEC for A&M because, they don't have to play Georgia. They don't have to play Bama. Ole Miss is going to be one of the top teams in the SEC this year, in the country this year. They don't have to play them. And their four biggest games, LSU, Missouri, Texas, and Notre Dame, are all at home this year. And so you kind of look at the schedule and you say, man, this just really plays out favorably. You get 2 bye weeks. Some years you only get 1. And so I think it actually plays out in their favor a little bit. They also have quite a bit of juniors and seniors on this team. It's a more experienced group, a healthier group outside of the Owens deal. I mean, if you look at their past teams over the last couple of years, preseason camp, I mean, it was a nightmare. They had a lot of guys out with injuries and stuff. So I think they're in a more favorable position to win, and that's why there's more pressure to, hey, this is not a rebuild year. This is not a 7-6 kind of thing. It's got to be 9-3 and, hey, contending for a college football playoff spot.
Carter, thank you, man. Paul, anything else?
No, I just wanted to ask about the quarterback depth. I know that Connor Wegman's health is, the biggest thing that they want to keep, but last year did kind of show that they might have one of the better quarterback depth charts in the SEC, if not the country, because Jalen Henderson availed himself pretty well when he was healthy. And, Marcel Reed kind of thrown in the bowl game late, really played kind of well in that game once he kind of got his sea legs. So are they, can they withstand an injury to Connor Wegman if it's just a couple weeks?
Well, you definitely don't want to see your starter go down regardless. This guy does have a lot of hype from certain people. Some ESPN, Matt Miller thinks he'll be a first-round pick next year. Now, I'm not that high on him, but it would be a loss, no doubt about it. But, yes, you're totally right that these two backup quarterbacks, a lot of teams in the country would be fortunate to have. Jalen Henderson last year put up 50 points. I know it's Mississippi State. They weren't very good, but 50-plus points on any SEC team, if you're a backup quarterback, and especially with what the situation he entered himself into. I mean, that was a team that was just over with that season and not, not in a good place. And so to put up that amount of points and do what he did, I thought was impressive. Same with his performance against LSU. Put almost 30, 40 points up on them on the road. And yeah, Marcel Reed, what he did in the bowl game, what he did in the spring game. He was only a true freshman last year. And yeah, I think that was kind of one of the bigger surprises on the positive side last year is, no one knew how good either of those guys were going into the season because Jalen Henderson had played like 20 snaps in his career at Fresno State, and Marcel Reed was a true freshman who, was on the skinnier side and was kind of thought to be, a guy who would be maybe more of a project. But, hey, they came in right away and showed some positive stuff. So, yeah, I think you could argue that collectively this quarterback room is in great shape. And while you wouldn't want to see Weigman go down, it wouldn't be as catastrophic as it's been over the last few years where, 2020 and 2021, you had your quarterback go down and it was a disaster for this team. So, yeah, I think they could be in okay shape, but certainly don't want to see Weigman go down as well.
Carter, thank you very much. We'll be in touch again. Carter Carls from Texas A&M, covers Texas A&M, for 247 Sports. We appreciate his time. Around the corner, Tim Brando, Fox Sports. This is 365 Sports. So today I had a UPS alert that said you've got a package about to arrive sometime late morning, early afternoon, and sure enough, there's part of the inside of the box from TexasBeefHouse.com. Those sirloin cap steaks that I was able to buy on their online. There you see it. And they also added about 3 or 4 packages of Wagyu ground beef. And there was some Wagyu sausage, breakfast sausage involved. So there's some of the pictures inside the box. Samantha Duvall had sent me the alert. It said you'll have a package arriving on Tuesday. I was in that online auction 2 weeks, 4 weeks ago, and I was outbid at the last second. I said, I'm bound and determined not to overbid. I'm not going to do that, but to get what they had available at TexasBeefHouse.com. Online auction through TexasBeefHouse.com through Bid on Beef, which is a company that runs their auctions. And sure enough, I won that sirloin. And on top of that, they added some extra specials inside the box. It was frozen. I wasn't worried about whether it was going to take a couple of days. I got the alert on Sunday that the package was on its way, and it arrived earlier today. Thanks to Samantha Duvall, thanks to all of them. Tyler, Dr. Duvall, Aaron Duvall, and his wife, and that family that does an amazing job. They raise Angus cattle. They also produce Wagyu and Angus steaks, ribeyes, sirloins, New York strip. You want great beef product, TexasBeefHouse.com is there. And if you use 365 Sports, you get 10% off any order that you have over $100 at TexasBeefHouse.com.
Score big savings at the Kickoff to Savings event at Richard Carr Buick, a first-year All-American and a 2024 Car and Driver Magazine Editor's Choice. The all-new Buick Envista starts at only $23,990. Or make the winning drive in a 2024 Buick Encore GX SUV and save $4,000 for non-GM car owners. Qualified buyers get 0.9% financing and no payments for 90 days. Score your deal at the Kickoff to Savings event going on now at Richard Carr Buick.
At Richard Carr, we give you more.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
Get Get ready, Baylor fans. The ultimate game weekend experience awaits you at the Baylor Club. Kick off your weekend with our Friday Night Live pep rally. With live entertainment and special appearances from the Baylor Spirit Squad, it's the perfect way to start your game weekend with a roar. On Saturdays, don't miss our Knox Hall tailgate. Enjoy delicious food, ice-cold drinks, and great company as you gear up for the big game. And after the weekend's excitement, wrap it all up with our famous Bear brunches on Sundays. Don't wait. Make your game weekends legendary with the Baylor Club membership today.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. This segment is brought to you by Michelob Ultra. It's only worth it if you enjoy it. Containing only 95 calories and 2.6 carbs.
Got him. By the way, thanks to Retired Stockbroker for a super chat. We appreciate that. And Tim Brando, Fox Sports. Man, have we missed you. I saw you swinging the club earlier today playing golf. I hope it went well. Hope you're doing well. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, Smoke. Thanks. It's great to be with all you guys. And, yeah, the first 2 weeks of August, I was on the shelf, man. I've not been that sick in a long, long time. And I'd gotten back from our college football seminar and NFL seminar. Had a good week at home, and all of a sudden, man, I got a case of Montezuma's revenge. It was COVID-like symptoms, but not COVID. I definitely checked on it, but I couldn't get out of bed for like 3 days, and then I tried probably a little too soon to do some work in the front yard, mow the grass. Well, that was a setback. That probably set me back a little further. I should have not been so hard-headed. And I should have probably gone in to see my doctor and gotten a cortisone shot sooner. But finally, after about 10 days, I went in and I got the cortisone shot, and so I've gotten better. But it was just really, really heavy duty chest congestion and phlegm and nothing digestive, nothing like that. But hard time to sleep at night. You know, I was on the NyQuil Tylenol diet for like 10 days, and finally I got the cortisone shot, and I'm a lot better. Played great today. I've not played golf since I was at Trump National, so it's been almost 3.5 weeks. And I guess because I thought I might be a little bit slow and not my normal gregarious self, I played a little more cerebral round and didn't try to do anything too daring, and I shot an 82. So I had a great round. No birdies, but I made no double bogeys either. So that helped, and got together with my guys. Going to do it again Thursday, and maybe one more time on the weekend, and then I got to work. It's time for me to get back at it. Devin and I do work the week 0 game on FS1 in Albuquerque between New Mexico and Montana State, that FCS power that is Montana State. And then we're off to the races. After that, we've got big boy football the rest of the way. So time for me to get back at it.
Tim, now you got to break in a new color analyst, and I'm going to miss hearing you two together, but is that process though fun? I mean, I know that it can be challenging where you have to find each other's beats and all of that, but now that you have a chance to break in a new partner, what's that like?
Well, it's a couple of things. One, and like you, when we first heard about it, Spencer and I a couple of months back, it was, there was pause. It's difficult to hear. I think we both probably thought that we were going to ride into the sunset together. But you know what? The good news is the sun has not set yet for either of us, and they had other plans. So, that's the good news. If they say we're making a change and the change means you're not working, then that's a real bad change. So if they're making a change and they just want to liven it up and deliver new partners for you, I can't speak for Spencer, but I can speak for myself. My first year at Fox was without Spencer, and one of the reasons they hired me And one of the things I tried to convince them of, no executive is going to take a victory lap over hiring a 58-year-old play-by-play sportscaster who's also hosted and has worked at 3 different networks over 30-plus years in the business. I mean, they're not. So for me to be hired at Fox, I had to convince them that I could help them in a variety of ways. And one of those ways was to help their younger talent. That of all the play-by-play people they had, and this included, mostly I was talking about college football, their portfolio for college football. Gus is a good 10, 11, 12 years younger than me. The other play-by-play guys that they have, Jason Benetti, and in the past it was Joe Davis. Those are all guys, 20, 25, 30 plus years younger than I am. I mean, I could be their dads. So, but they didn't have a guy that had that kind of experience and a voice that had been so identified with college football over a variety of networks over such a long period of time. And so when I met with them in the summer of 2014, a little over 10 years ago, I was asked the question, where do you see yourself in 10 years? And I told them, ironically, here we are 10 years later. But what I said to them was, I don't think you have a guy like Vern Lundquist at your network. And I'd like to be your Vern. I think I could be your Vern. And by that, I mean a guy that you could plug in anywhere. If your top guys, for whatever reason, have to go do something else, you're going to get a first-rate broadcast. But more importantly, if you've got young analysts that are coming up, whether it's football, basketball, whatever, I'm a guy that has specialized with working with a number of different people in all the sports I've covered for many, many years. And I think I can help make them better. And that first year, if I was thrown right into the booth with, of all people, Joel Klatt, who had not worked with anyone nearly as experienced as me up until that time. Joel had been in the studio, and we had some weeknight games that year, and they wanted Joel to work with me. And then on weekends, when Joel was in the studio, they wanted to utilize me with Brady Quinn, who had never been in the booth at all, ever. Brady was just coming off of the last cut of the Miami Dolphins in Key Biscayne. And he shadowed Joel and I when we did our first games together. And then we did a game after that. And I think both of those guys flourished. I think both of them had really good years. The following season, Charles Davis moved to the NFL, and Joel moved up to work with Gus. And I think that year we had together, we did the Pac-12 title game that year, the Mariota win over Arizona in Santa Clara. And he was very impressive, and I knew he was hardwired for great success. And I was happy to be a part of, his growth. I really was. And the same thing with Brady. Brady's gone on to do a lot of NFL stuff as well as, of course, Big Noon. So that first year, that's kind of what I did. And in basketball, whether it was with Donnie Marshall or Jimmy Jackson, or obviously Raph and I do a lot of games together too. But my point was, let me be your Vern. Let me be the guy that brings some gravitas, some history, some tradition, and you can bring some of your younger guys up, and maybe I can be of help. Well, when those guys moved up and we needed an additional analyst, it was their idea. They came to me and said, Tim, is there anyone you would recommend? And, I said Spencer. He was in the final year of his deal. And so without them, Spencer and I don't get the 9 additional years that gave us 25 overall in the last 26 years together. So he and I are both very proud of the fact that we had that run, and it was historic. I mean, only Herbstreit and Fowler have been together longer in college. The only broadcasters that spent that much time together over 2 networks in the history of calling play-by-play in color is Summerall and Madden. I mean, that's rarefied air. So we're both very, very proud of the fact that we had that time together. But for Spencer, I think change is good. He's approaching it that way. He's going to work with Eric Collins. And for me, Devin Gardner is a guy that's, he's he's really talented. He's done a lot of stuff in Detroit, the Detroit area already. He's been doing Lions preseason games. He did the UFL back in the spring, but he's not worked with anyone as experienced as me. And I think they believe that the former Michigan quarterback is a guy they want on some more high-profile games in the Big Ten, particularly those on Friday nights. I think we're going to do, not all of them, but probably I'd say more than half of those Friday night games will probably be ours. And on the weeks that we don't do Friday night games, we'll be getting really good Saturday games. And he's 32 years old. My youngest daughter's 34. So I'm excited about working with Devin, and I know he's excited about working with me. So watching him grow and watching him flourish and setting him up to be, the star that the executives at Fox want him to be, that's my calling card. At this stage of my career, if I'm going to stay around for as long as I'd like to stay around, then that's going to be my task. That's going to be the role I play. So I'm very enthused about what we're going to be able to accomplish. And, yeah, we'll have to learn one another, and that whole chemistry thing evolves over time. But he's got a good handle, I think, on the way I go about my business. And I can tell you, I'm very excited about him. Having seen some of his work already, I know he's going to be really, really good. He's a classic type A quarterback perfectionist. Got a lot of Joel Klatt in him. Got a lot of Brady Quinn in him, really. But there's some fine-tuning that can come, and hopefully I can help in that area. So that's really the task at hand for me.
One thing that you may not know is that he is kind of a mentor for Baylor's transfer quarterback, DeQuan Finn, out of Toledo. He's a guy that,
I heard that.
Yeah.
I heard that.
Yeah,
I did. And he was really big at the Manning Passing Academy. Archie and Coop and Peyton. I saw Cooper at our seminar, and he was one of the counselors as, after he participated as a kid. He, for those that don't know, and maybe are trying to remember in your area of the country, it was Devin Gardner that wore the number 98 as quarterback at Michigan, paying homage to the great Tom Harmon. And so he has a real understanding of history and tradition, and he got banged up when he went to the pros, and his career was cut short. But he's been on top of wanting to be a really top-notch broadcaster for quite some time. So he's not a novice. He's going to come in with some experience, and I think we'll hit the ground running a little bit. As I said, Brady had never done it at all. I mean, he had never been in the booth, period. And I've been in situations like that. Every booth is different, but he'll be, for the first time, Devin will be in a booth with a guy that's spotted with me for 20-plus years, Brett Bender, Scotty Alexander, my content coordinator and statistician. He's going to be in a big-time booth environment that he's never been in before. And I think that's really going to help him as an analyst. And I just, like I said, my job is to make him great. And that's the role when you get to this particular time in your life as I have, that you have to play.
Tim, I know because you have been down for a couple of weeks, and I just heard you kind of cough because your voice could be worn out. Is it okay? Do you want us to break here, or do you want to give you a chance to take a glass of water or something like that?
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay.
Whatever
good.
you need to do.
All right. By the way, everybody in the chat is saying, thank God you're back. They love it. They loved your segment. They appreciate, they're glad you're feeling better too. Go ahead, Paul.
Tim, I remember Devin honoring Tom Harmon. So does this mean that you're now in good with Gibbs from NCIS?
I guess so. It's funny. He actually told me that when Tom Harmon came to visit, well, not Tom, when Mark Harmon came to visit, now this shows you the difference in age. He said, I had no idea who he was. I'd never seen any of his shows. I said, well, did you not know he was a starting quarterback at UCLA? He said, hell no, I had no idea. So, I'm going to play that card all I can. And I told him that his nickname is forever, 98. I'll be referring to him as 98 quite a lot. because it was a very distinctive quality about him. And as I said before, I think the thing about guys that are quarterbacks, especially guys that were starters in big-time environments like Michigan or like Brady at Notre Dame, they've got a very succinct feel about the way they want to see the game and view the game. And my hope is to broaden that perspective some, and at the same time allow him to understand that some of those factors that make you special, taking risks as an announcer, like first guessing. So if you feel that you believe a play is going to go a certain direction before the snap, I'll be quiet. You just let it go. I think sometimes guys are a little tentative early in their careers because they don't want to look bad. Sometimes you got to understand that if you don't take the shot, then you never get the credit.
Mm-hmm.
The opposite of that would have been Romo in his first year. Remember, Romo working with Nance got all this credit because he kind of knew the offenses, and he really didn't have to do a lot of homework to know what the tendencies of the teams were. It's different in college because you don't know everything the way you know the way NFL franchises operate. Okay, it's a whole different animal. But that doesn't mean you still can't take some shots. Go ahead and say where you believe a play may be going, or I see an ISO up here at the top, those kinds of things. I want him to know that he can trust that he's never going to get in my way by suggesting something before the snap. Now, once the snap takes place, I got to make the call. But prior to the snap, go get you some, big fella. That's part of it. And I think a lot of times with young analysts today, particularly if they're just working games here and games there, if you haven't been really well produced, well directed with some experienced people, that's the other great thing about our team. I'll have the same producer, Jake Jolivet, same director, Dustin Dente. Our crew's been together now 7 years. So that's what makes a broadcast special. Not just the guys in the booth, but the guys that from a production standpoint are with you. They're kind of feeling the game with you. They understand it. And their knowledge of where Devin wants to go and where I'd like to take him, if there's a sixth sense for that and you develop that over time, it makes the broadcast a lot easier.
Well, it's a compliment, no question, to what they know you can do with him. And I hate that you and Spencer were split up, but again, you move on, and I know you're going to make Devin into a star. Tim, the top 25 polls are out. The AP came out yesterday. It's pretty much, I think, cut and dry with what I expect.
Sure.
There's no group of 5 team. Yeah.
Rinse, repeat. Here we go.
Yep.
Same crap. Alabama, they're screaming bloody murder, lowest preseason ranking since 2009. I'm like, they have no business being in the top 10. No business being in the top 10. You look at that schedule and you look at what they've got coming back, they should be right around where Missouri is. It's just brand name, and then we get to Ole Miss and we go, okay, we'll switch it up here and we'll put Ole Miss number 6 and shake it up. But the top 5, correct me if I'm wrong, fellas, doesn't Ohio State play Oregon very early? I believe they do, don't they?
I think they're right. It's in the first,
very early.
It's before it's right at the turn, basically.
Yeah.
So
I mean, fellas, how can you have those teams? It's like, let's just stack them up like a starting grid at the Bristol Motor Speedway in Tennessee, and have our NASCAR race of brand names. The damn AP poll, along with, and this just plays right in it fans the flames of the corruption in the college football playoff committee meetings, because they stack these teams based on brands every year, no consideration given to schedule. Alabama's got a pretty tough schedule. No consideration given to it. No. Why? They're Alabama. Has anybody considered the schedule of Missouri? And you got them at 11? Check that schedule, fellas.
how in God's name could Missouri, based on who they've got to play and the Burton kid coming back, what they did to Kansas State early, does that not matter at all? That's a good team that's got a cakewalk schedule, even in the almighty SEC. How can they be 11? They don't consider at all. They never do, these writers. They never do. They just stack it with the big names so that it's easier for the committee to keep the big names where they want, and programs like Florida State continue to get screwed. Now, we're going to have the same problems we had with 4, with 12. The difference is going to be it won't be quite as big a deal because the team left out won't be undefeated. But there will be 2 lost teams, maybe even 3 lost teams, that are far more deserving than an Alabama, or far more deserving than potentially an Ohio State or a Notre Dame, that won't get in, while those teams are still on the precipice of getting in because of who the hell they are. And until the committee comes out with more specific criteria, which to this point they have not, then, other than us knowing that everybody that's in the, quote, Power 4 gets in, we know that the Big 12 will get a team. We know the ACC will get a team. They're stacking this thing up so the Big 10 can get 4 and the SEC can get 4. It's just as corrupt as it will be with 4. It just won't be, as I mentioned, quite as noticeable because we won't have anything as egregious as what we had last year with Florida State being left out. But we're going to have the same problems. We absolutely are. Pencil in. The only thing that you would do differently is what? Put Liberty or Tulane or said team out of the group of 5 in, or what used to be the group of 5 in, into that 12 hole. But everything else is stacked a certain way. Iowa is the Big Ten version of Missouri. Have you checked the Iowa schedule? Now, I know the offense has been god-awful, but McNamara is coming back off the injury, and they do have a better offense, I believe, coming in. And look at who they play. That team, they could be an 11-1 team. It's like no consideration given for schedule and how teams could possibly ascend. And that broken record of mine about corruption in the college football playoff will not stop simply because we have 12 over 4.
Tim, and you kind of see this too at the bottom of the poll where you run into where there's less of a clear argument to make, because the brands, while not as big as the top, are still pretty big, right? And then, USC's not in this thing, let's throw them in there. Well, what had USC done to deserve that? You could make a better case for Louisville, Virginia Tech, Boise State, SMU, West Virginia, and Memphis right now, I think, than USC.
No doubt about it. Hell, Boise State. They might go undefeated out of their league. The only reason USC is ranked where they are in the AP poll is because they have to play LSU early. Right? They're banking on the fact that LSU's going to fix their problems defensively sooner than USC will fix their problems defensively, hence LSU being ranked where they are, sandwiched between Utah and Clemson. To be perfectly honest, I am shocked that Utah got that high of a ranking. That's the one that, normally they'd be 19, 20. They'd be down there where K-State is, where Arizona and Kansas are. The respect for the Big 12, I will tell you, is, I think, noticeable because when you've got that many teams ranked, 5 or so, I believe, that's telling you they know the league is going to be good bottom to top. And it will be. Now, the key is going to be one of these teams, whether it's Kansas State or Utah, needs to get off to that sort of 6-7-0, 8-0 sort of TCU and 22 kind of story developing, because if you don't have that, then you'll be overlooked by everybody. The carnival barkers that are doing the pep rally shows on morning television, okay, the show I originally hosted years and years ago that most would have you believe didn't exist until 1993, that show over there on the 4-letter network, they're not going to talk about any Big 12 teams until they get to an 7-0 or 8-0. They're not. I'm telling you, they're not. And the same is true with teams out of the ACC, unless you're Clemson, okay, possibly Miami. This thing is railroaded so that the Big Ten and SEC can buy, and one of them will get 4 teams in. It absolutely is. There is no doubt in my mind that one of those 2 conferences is going to get 4 in come hell or high water.
Yeah, you can't ever see a scenario, and you would hope that because of what they've done that it could happen, but there's never going to be more than, one group of 5 team that gets in?
Probably not, and that's unfortunate because who knows? What if there's lightning in a bottle?
Yep.
I've seen some of those Mountain West teams, and you have too. And I know it's been hard times since Fickle left Cincinnati in that, for them in the Big 12. We'll see what happens with them moving forward. But there are going to be times, in college football where some of these programs really do flourish. Look, if the Daniels kid stays healthy, guys, Kansas, put them in your spotlight, in your back pocket, because that's a team that could wreak havoc this year. I mean, they could. And if they don't, I really believe K-State could. That Kansas State-Arizona game on Friday the 13th of September, which Devin and I are already assigned that game, I cannot tell you how big a game for the Big 12 that is. It is a huge game because the winner of that game, in my view, is going to be the team that vies with Utah to be the kingpin and will challenge Utah, who, in my estimation, their defense is ready, and with Cam Rising back and apparently healthy, reports out of there are very, very good. That team is legitimate, and I know it's the wrong time zone for a lot of people, but, Utah's won over a lot of blue blood college football people. They know, just the kind of job they've done. And it's a solid program through and through. And if the kid at K-State is as good as we hear he is, and he was good enough for Will Howard to go check out Columbus, Ohio, where I'm not sure if he's even going to be the starter, but sounds like he might be. Kansas State could be hell on wheels too. So I think the Big 12 Conference has a great chance to be a party spoiler, a party crasher. And if they're not, somebody else could easily be. Look, Arizona's bringing back a lot of talent. And the coach that replaced Jed Fish that went to UW, Brennan, did an incredible job with nothing to work with at San Jose. Took them to a Mountain West title during the COVID year. And, they had no budget, nothing to work with. Former UCLA wide receiver, played for Rick Neuheisel back in the day. Good guy, good coach. There's a lot. And the Dillingham kid at Arizona State, probably a year away. But I'm telling you guys, the Big 12 is just going to be rock'em sock'em. Every game's going to be close. I'm looking forward to that Texas Tech Wazoo game that we're going to get. I think that's week 2, which is for us will be week 3. It'll be our 3rd game out at in Pullman on the Palouse. Texas Tech is another team that, not getting a lot of love. They never do, but you guys look back on that. That 0-2 start they had a year ago, was that not the best 0-2 team that you can remember before they got all banged up? They were legit, and I think that Joey's going to have a chance of having a great season. Now, it's hard to win at Wazoo, but and Wazoo's trying to get as many big victories against quality opponents while they're representing the only 2 teams in what was the Pac-12. But That's a very important game for Texas Tech, just as was the Wyoming and those Oregon games that they had last year, which could have gone either way. If you look back on it, Texas Tech could have won either one of those games last year.
Tim, the ACC and the Big 12 find themselves in similar positions when it comes to this college football playoff. Florida State, Clemson, maybe Miami, look like they are teams that can contend for that. But is this going to be kind of a race between these two conferences to see which one lucks out in we got a second team in this thing?
Well, I do think that the league that has the best chance of getting two, if you're going to, narrow it down to that, it's the Big 12. Okay, because enough teams in the Big 12 are able to dodge one another that I think there's a chance you could have a couple of teams with gaudy records, which is what it's going to take. As I said, you need lightning in a bottle for one of them. You need the ability. The question for teams like Kansas State and even Utah, new to the league, I think Utah's proven it. They did in the Pac-12, as good as that league was, and I don't need to tell you guys how great it was a year ago. But even then, with all the injuries they had and no Cam Rising, they competed. Over the long haul, a team like that is hardwired to go out and take care of business against teams you're supposed to beat. It's one thing to beat teams in big games when you're playing late at night and everybody's watching you. Okay? Or Oregon's going to go through that in the Big Ten this year. I love Oregon to beat Ohio State, and I love Oregon to possibly win the Big Ten this year. Okay? But the thing Oregon's going to have to do is they're going to have to learn to win the games after those big games where everybody's watching, okay? After game day's been there, after Big Noon has been there, after, Chris and Kirk have called the game in prime time, and you got to come back the next week and play in the middle of the afternoon against, let's say a team like, Purdue, or a team like Wisconsin, or a team like Iowa that a lot of people aren't that pumped up about. You got to take care of business against those teams. And in the Pac-12, what happened was those teams did not have the discipline more oftentimes than not to get that done. Now, UW did last year. Oregon did last year. Will they be able to do that with the cross-country travel that they've got to make to play those games? I think in the Big 12, it's a similar story. Kansas State is going to have a huge crowd for that Arizona game, but will they be able to pick back up and then go play against the team that they're supposed to beat and take care of business? Utah in the past has been able to do that. Teams like Kansas State, teams like Kansas and Texas Tech, if you want to step up in class, Oklahoma State is that team that no one talks about, fellas, but you guys know Gundy.
Oh, yeah.
He wins those games all the time. I mean, that's what Oklahoma State's calling card has been. It's one of the reasons why in the last decade and a half of what the Big 12 used to be, it wasn't Texas and OU about Big 12 titles. No, it was coming down to Oklahoma State and Oklahoma and Bedlam if you were talking about winning Big 12 titles. More oftentimes than not, that was the game, not the Red River Shootout. I mean, it wasn't. Texas got it together late, finally. And, Texas is still the biggest game. I remember all that, and I'm giving them their due. But Gundy is a specialist schematically in winning games when his team doesn't play its best or against opponents that maybe his team wasn't as up for as you would like them to be, and yet he got out of there with a W. The team that's got the discipline to do that in the Big 12 is going to have a chance to get in, even if they don't win the Big 12. I think the ACC, in my mind, is a one-bid league. I don't think they've got the strength in numbers to be as competitive as need be. You can make a case that Florida State is right now in a better position than Clemson, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. But I don't think that you can get both of those teams in. I just don't. And You got too many bottom feeders. It's going to really take a while for teams like Stanford and Cal to fit in, and SMU to some extent. SMU might surprise the hell out of a lot of people early. I mean, they could be a factor. They really could. That program is I think armed and dangerous, and those oil baron boys are ready to take on the ACC, aren't they? We'll win your league, and we don't even want your money.
Yeah.
I love them.
Yeah, their confidence level is really, really good, and it's either going to help them or the bubble might be popped. And but
tell you what we'll do. They're saying we'll tell you what we'll do, Stanford. Cal. We'll underwrite you so those liberals will let you come play big boy football. But by God, we don't want the money. We just want the title.
Yeah, we want the title, and we want to be associated with the autonomy force so they could raise $196 million or whatever it is. And they got a lot of momentum. I'm excited for them. Not everybody is. There's some that just can't stand it, you know. But
I am. I'm happy for SMU. I think it's great, and I think it's super that they're going to come into the ACC, which has got a lot of problems. Okay, and they're going to try to make those folks, those holier than thous in places like Clemson and Tallahassee and Miami, who are thinking about, we want to be in the big boy league. They're going to remind them that maybe they need to take care of themselves where they are before they worry about going to the SEC or the Big Ten.
Tim, thank you. Get that voice rested. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it. And we hope to have you on quite a bit, as you know, throughout the football season.
Well, it means a lot. And I thank all of your folks that chime in and are happy that I'm back. I'm happy to be back. And in a few weeks, once toe meets leather, let's get together again.
Yes, sir. You stay tight. We'll talk to you soon. Tim Brando, Fox Sports, with us on 365 Sports. A couple of notes in the chat room. I want to get to a couple of the comments. I don't know if it's Tykev. Someone should tell Brando that Oregon doesn't play Iowa this season in the regular season, and he was bringing up somebody that he was using those as examples without the schedule in front of him. I'll tell you that right now, I can probably screw up who Bader's going to play, and I cover him on an every week basis.
You know what? He
was using them as examples of not ranked, although Iowa's 25th, but teams that if you're not careful the following week could bite you after a big game.
Okay, so in my brain right now, the Baylor schedule is Tarleton, then Utah.
And then home.
And then they're home again.
Against Air Force.
After that, I know that October 19th is Texas Tech. And then I know who they play this year. But when, I'll deal with that after I get all the other stuff we have to get done.
Yeah.
This is, for you and me in particular, these next 2 weeks are crazy times. And superfluous details like who people are playing 3 weeks from now, I can't. It'll have to come out later.
No, not even my favorite team do I know other than UTEP and then Colorado, and that's it. Yeah.
Here's what I know. Next Saturday, Florida State plays Georgia Tech in Ireland at noon.
Yep.
That's what I know. Yep. That's what I have to know. I don't need any other things in my brain.
For anyone to think that I'm going to reel off who's playing whom, it was examples, but at Tycaf, I get that maybe you felt like he should have known examples of what he was bringing up, and that's fine. That's your prerogative and your opinion, too. Coming up, thanks to Tim Brando, he's playing with pain. He was out for 2 weeks. I remember texting him. He had given me a note. I guess the last time we had him on before the summer, hey, get back with me on this date. And I did. And we were set to be able to have a segment, and then he came down with the creeping crud, and you could tell he had to cough a couple of different times, and I wanted to give him a break, but we're good. But, you know, one of the things he said about Utah, I hope everyone listened to what he said because it makes sense. It makes sense for someone like Kansas State, too, and a couple of others, is the style they play. There's not a lot of ups and downs. It's pretty much who they are every week. And that also can be a blessing because you don't get too high or too low. It doesn't mean they don't know who's a bigger game than maybe somebody else. But the style that they play can travel. That doesn't mean they're going to win when they travel, but it kind of allows them to be able to not get too high or too low with ups and downs of the emotions of who they're playing. All right, when we come back, a couple of notes to get to. Craig went to Baylor football practice. He has had a chance to go watch a little bit of the open session. We still have much more to come, including Ari Temkin for the Big 12 radio, and he's going to join us at just after 5. Coming up next, though, Brian Haydad. He covers Mississippi State and the connections there. Blake Shapen, former Baylor quarterback. Jeff Levy, who was at Baylor for a long time during the Bryles run, went to Oklahoma. Before that, he was at, UCF, and now the head coach at Mississippi State, and a couple of notes about them with the coaching change with Mississippi State. That's next. This is 365 Sports. Pioneer, Steel and Pipe. I'll just make a couple of comments about them. They have been in business since 1943. They have a beautiful complex, a beautiful facility east of I-35 in Waco on Highway 6 and Loop 340. Bigger, better, faster, and stronger, but the fundamentals of what a relationship with a customer means to business owners, that's how they survived, but also because they have great product. Pipe, steel, and metal. You want to build something, you need to know where to find them. Go online, pioneerboys.com if you need more information, but I'm telling you right now, a handshake for them still means a lot. They don't have repeat customers. They have repeat generational customers, families down the line, and if you need pipe, steel, and metal, pioneerboys.com, Loop 340, Highway 6, east of I-35 in Waco.
Bambi SQ, what is the number one reason or 2 or 3 reasons, Bambi, that people should contact House of Travel?
As a travel agency local here in Waco, we can take care of all your bookings, your payments, answer your questions, help you when there are issues or problems, things that may come up that you don't know what to do or how to fix them. People don't realize we don't charge a fee for what we do. It doesn't cost you extra to use a travel agent. We're just here. We get paid by the tour companies and the cruise lines to represent them. But you have an expert on your side that's here and local, and you have a name and a face to put together to help you with anything that you may need. Give us a call. We can price things for you. We can help you answer questions. We can make it simple, easy, and one stop.
Your knowledge of all the years you've done this and then spit it back to them or give them options?
It helps us to kind of know a date range, a budget, what your goals are and what you want to see and do on your vacation. And then that helps us to know what to look for, and we can narrow down and help you make the best choices for your vacation so you get the best value. You get exactly what you were hoping for, and making sure that it's taken care of with a carefree, easy, simple for you type vacation. I've been doing this for over 40 years. Every day I learn something new. I experience new situations and things that I can help take care of for people, whether it's just making sure you get the best deals and find the best vacations, or whether it's to solve that problem, like you've got a flight that's being canceled and you don't know what to do. There's weather coming up. Should I cancel my trip next week because of the hurricane? Those are things that we take care of and you don't have to worry about. You've got somebody that you can rely on that you know is an expert, knows what we're doing, have been doing this for a long time, so that you're not questioning, okay, does the person on the other end of the phone really understand what I'm asking or know how to find those deals? You've got an expert, and we are here to take care of that.
For more information, go to houseoftravelwaco.com.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and Equal Housing Lender.
Our good friend Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jewelers here at 365 Sports. Now, Brad, people who watch and listen to our show know I'm a double-time customer for you, engagement ring and wedding band, and you guys do that great, but that's not all you do at Boozer's Jewelers.
Absolutely, and I always like to say, it's a new year. It's a great way to start the year out. Go through your old jewelry. Go through your wife's jewelry box. Go through anything you're maybe not wearing, something that's broken, something that you're not using. We do a massive amount of custom work. We can take your old jewelry, old diamonds, old watches, and we can convert it into something special for you and make a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. And if that's not something you're interested in, a great thing is we can turn that into cash. So we buy gold, we buy diamonds, we'll buy Rolex watches, any kind of heirloom jewelry, anything that's maybe passed down to you.
Boozer's Jewelers, where do they find you, Brad?
We're at 1025 North Valley Mills Drive, right on the corner of Lake Air Drive and Valley Mills with the big clock on the corner.
Pioneer Steel and Pipe opened their doors in 1943, and they have never wavered with their focus on great product and customer service, relationships with a handshake, making sure you, the customer, is satisfied. Their new facility is now twice the size, allowing new inventory, higher quantities, and in a much more organized fashion. In addition to the long lengths in tubing, angles, channels, rods, and flat, Pioneer Steel and Pipe now offers several shorter, more convenient lengths of material already cut. Their 2,500 square foot showroom has over 1,000 new products in stock, new welding supplies, hardware, quickcrete, and do-it-yourself components for any project, whether you are a professional contractor or weekend warrior. The new facility is designed to make your loading experience faster and more efficient with easy drive lanes around the building and much more room to get your trailer loaded. Our location may have changed, but our values haven't, and our relationship with customers goes much farther than just business. Pioneer Steel and Pipe on Loop 340 and Highway 6 and just east of I-35 in Waco.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. This segment is brought to you by Bud Light. Enjoy the smooth, crisp taste of Bud Light beer. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy.
Brian Haydad, Sports Talk Mississippi with us on 365 Sports. Jeff Levy, year one with Mississippi State. Blake Shapen, Baylor quarterback with also Mississippi State. Brian, thanks for your time. What's just this first, I know it's early, but then again, the season's around the corner. They've had spring. What have you noticed? Any differences with what Jeff Levy's brought to the table?
It just feels like it's a more, I know it's still college, but it's a more professional organization. When you think about, Zach Arnett and his first year as a head coach last year, just wasn't ready for the big job. It just was not ready. Whereas with Jeff Levy, it feels like his career has kind of been building to this point from his time as an assistant at Baylor to Central Florida to Ole Miss, then Oklahoma. It's his time to be a head coach. He's come in with a plan. It feels like everybody's on the same page. There's a lot of excitement. They know it's going to be a very tough season. That schedule is brutal, and you've got a lot of new faces from a year ago. It's hard to believe this team, 2 seasons ago, won 9 games and finished in the top 20. Almost everybody from that team is gone now, and you've got a boatload of new faces. So it's going to be an interesting year here in Starkville, but it feels like it's the start of a promising career for Jeff Levy.
And with the SEC and what it is, and obviously 9 teams ranked, the 2 incoming teams, both of them, Texas, highly thought of and coming off their best year in forever, or at least over a decade or so. My concern about schools like Arkansas, Mississippi State, South Carolina, is it wrong to think that they've just been knocked down another peg or two, or is that too much of a defeatist thought?
Well, I always think about Mississippi State the same way. I think about them in cycles. And in a 5-year period, I like to say Mississippi State can have 3 years where they're a 7-8 win team. Maybe you have 1 year where you take a step back, you lose some big players, and you're a 6-win team, maybe even a 5-win team. And then you have your big year where everything kind of aligns for you, and you go out there and win 9-10 games and can contend for the college football playoff now that it's a 12-team playoff.
Mm-hmm.
State's problem is this over the last decade is when they've been set up for the big year, they've had a coaching change. In 2018, they were set up to have a huge year, but Dan Mullen goes to Florida and Joe Moorhead comes in and he can't maintain that momentum. Last year should have been a big year for Mississippi State. They were a senior-heavy team. They had a lot of experience coming back. But Mike Leach passes away, and you lose that, and then you don't stick with the air raid offense, and it all just falls apart for you. So for State, they've got to build back to that. I think Mississippi State is a program that can, in cycles, compete for the college football playoff, and I think South Carolina, Arkansas can be that way too. Ole Miss is usually a program like that, but they found a way to break the cycle with Kiffin in the way he uses the transfer portal, and now they're looking like a more consistent program. I don't know if that can keep up if he were to ever leave Ole Miss. So that's where that pops up. But I don't buy into the idea that State's fallen behind even further now. They can still be competitive in this SEC.
Blake Shapen transfers from Baylor, and he's had bright moments. And then also, the last year I think it was just the entire program was in the mud. What has he brought to the table? What has Levy said about his development? And where is he? Is he the obvious starter? That's why he's there?
Yeah, he's QB1. There's no question about that. He'll get the start in 2 weeks when State takes the field against Eastern Kentucky. Chapin and Levy seem to have a very great relationship. I asked Levy on Sunday when we talked to him. He said, we talk about chemistry within the team. What about you and your quarterback? Do y'all have that chemistry? And he said, oh, that's a definite. That's a definite. He said, there's no question about that. And when we got a chance to talk to Chapin at SEC Media Days, he seems like he's very much locked into what Jeff Levy wants to do, but they're on the same page. What he's brought to Mississippi State is something State didn't really have in the air raid, and that's the deep ball. If you go back and watch the spring game, I thought he was very accurate on his deep passes. He looked like he could make all the throws. Will Rogers threw for a ton of yards at Mississippi State, but was definitely limited in how far he could push the ball down the field. I don't think State will have that problem this year. Obviously, with Chapin, you worry about the health. It was a problem for him at Baylor staying on the field. But if he can do that for Mississippi State, this is an offense that puts up big numbers year in and year out. So hopefully Blake Chapin can continue that trend.
What has he said about this offense? Because it is something that maybe favors him more. They were really good, obviously, with Bohannon and Baylor in 2021. Then they went to Chapin, who had that nice run at the end. But it was the wide zone, and they just didn't throw the ball well. I think it was a combination of the offense, the receivers, the time he had to throw. What has he said about this offense? I would think this is like a kid with a bunch of candy in his hand.
Yeah, that's pretty much correct. Yeah, that he loves what State likes to do offensively, what Jeff Levy wants to do offensively. He feels like his skill set fits this offense like a glove. I'll be interested to see from a running perspective. When Levy has been very successful as an offensive coordinator, his quarterback has been able to give him a good bit in the running game, especially when he was at Ole Miss with Matt Corral. Corral actually led them in rushing in 2021. I don't know if that's going to be the case here at State for two reasons. One, I don't know if Chapin is that much of a plus runner. But two, I think they want to do everything they can to keep him healthy because they just aren't 100% sold on the backups. You've got a redshirt freshman in Chris Parson and a true freshman in Michael Van Buren, both highly touted guys, four-star guys coming out of high school, but don't know if they're ready to take over this offense. So I think State's going to really run its run game through the running back as best they can and try to leave the Chapin back there to pass the ball as much as he can.
Brian Haydad with us. He's our go-to when it comes to Mississippi State and the connection with Levy and Chapin and more. What are some other guys that Mississippi State, as far as those who could help them win games, and what is the actual strength, and then what are some things that Coach Levy, coordinators, and fans need to worry about?
I think State is strong at receiver. They brought in a few transfers. Kelly Akari, who played at UTEP last year, was a big play receiver for the Miners, averaged 22 yards a catch, well over 1,000 yards receiving. They bring in Kevin Coleman from Louisville, who was a four-star kid coming out of high school, signed with Jackson State when Deion was there, and then transferred to Louisville when Deion left for Colorado. They brought in Trent Hudson from New Mexico, who was a big play receiver for that team last year. So they've got some guys there, and then they signed 3 4-star receivers out of high school, including a local kid, Stalka Burnside, who the coaches love. They think that he is physically ready to play at the SEC level, even as a true freshman. So I think State has some talented pass catchers to work with in this offense. They've got some guys in the running game that they feel like they're going to be committee by approach on that. They're not going to have a guy who just goes out there and gets them 1,000+ yards, but I think they have some guys who can get them 500-600 yards apiece. Defensively is where most of your questions are. State was not very successful in the transfer portal. They have a first-year defensive coordinator in Coleman Hutzler, who's never called plays at this level before. And, they really are just going to have to rely on a bunch of inexperienced guys. One complaint I consistently had with Zach Arnett, and even with Mike Leach when he was here, was that they did not do a great job of rotating guys defensively. That's why Jet Johnson and Pookie Watson, I think they combined for about 750 tackles a season ago because they just played every snap. And you've got a bunch of guys that you liked out of high school. They have the recruiting profile, but they just have not played at this level. So State has a lot of question marks on the defensive side of the ball.
Brian, I was looking at the schedule. You mentioned Eastern Kentucky on the 30, opening up the last weekend in August. Arizona State, it's a road game, and it's a long travel. And they're kind of going through transition. Toledo, you got to be careful of teams out of the MAC. And then Florida, who we don't know with Billy Napier and company. Doesn't that schedule, if in fact they don't throw up on themselves, doesn't that give them a chance to start that season 4-0?
They have a great chance to do that. I mean, the Arizona State game, it's tough to win on the road, but Arizona State, if we're being honest, is probably the second or third worst Power 4 team out there behind Vanderbilt and maybe somebody else, but they're down towards the bottom. Toledo, that was a great team, and Jason Candle's a great coach there, but you should be able to beat that team at home. The Florida game is, people have asked me, I say that's the biggest game of the year for Mississippi State. If they can win that game, they should be 3-0 coming into it, should have a lot of excitement, should have a good crowd. You're 4-0 if you win that game. You still have a game with UMass on the schedule.
Yep.
You got to think you can win one more and get back into a bowl game at that point. You still get to play Arkansas at home. I'm not very high on the Hogs at all this season. And then you just never know what's going to happen at that point. So, yeah, that Florida game is absolutely massive for Mississippi State, especially when you consider what the schedule is, the final 8 games of the season after what you mentioned.
They have number 1, number 4, number 6 with Texas and Georgia back-to-back on the road at Ole Miss, at Tennessee, A&M at home. Those are 6 ranked teams in the top 20, and 3 of them in the top, 6? Oh, my God. Yeah. Is the part of the SEC, and at times maybe they're a little bit at times people act like they invented football, but the problem is you don't have – there are times if you turn around and you lose a game you're not supposed to, which they sure can't afford to do that. It's a battering ram. We're done. Oh, bam, bam. I mean, Texas and Georgia back-to-back on the road, then home against A&M, and we know Mike Elko, that team will be tough. That's just that just jumps out at you. You hear about Florida's schedule and Oklahoma's schedule, but my goodness, Mississippi State didn't get any favors from the SEC.
And we haven't mentioned Missouri. They host Missouri in between Tennessee and at Ole Miss. That's the last three games of the season are at Tennessee, Missouri at home, at Ole Miss. Those are all 3 teams that could be college football playoff contenders when you get to that point in the season.
Absolutely.
It is an absolutely brutal schedule. That's why I say in year 1, if Levy finds a way to win 6, let's say he wins those 4 non-conference games and he can beat Florida and Arkansas, that is a very, very successful year 1 for Jeff Levy.
Question from a couple other guys that do the show with me, Garrett, Paul, and Craig. Do you you like what the offensive line coach and Cody Kennedy has done to try to put that unit together through the transfer portal?
He was the guy. I said the defensive side didn't have any success. He had a ton of success in the transfer portal. He got Ethan Miner from North Texas, who was the top-rated center in the portal. He got Mac Pounders out of Memphis, who was really, really good for the Tigers a year ago, a Mississippi kid from there. Got Jacoby Jackson out of Texas Tech, and then Marlon Martinez from LSU. So he got 4 guys who, if all 4 of those guys could be starters for Mississippi State on opening day. Cody Kennedy, I think, has done a great job of putting together what looks like on paper a line that can compete in the SEC and be successful.
Also, you mentioned the young receivers that they were able to get in the recruiting out of high school. I didn't realize this stat. They have not had a wide receiver drafted in nearly 30 years. Is that right?
So that is the correct statement, and it's not. I always feel like I need to correct it. I'm not saying they haven't had a first rounder in 30 years.
Right.
They've not had a single wide receiver drafted since Eric Moulds in 1996. That is the last Mississippi State wide receiver. You think about how almost impossible that is.
Yes.
And State's had some good receivers in there. They, De'Runnya Wilson and Fred Ross a few years back. I mean, some names that will be familiar to Mississippi State fans, but they have not had one. And, you look across the state and you have Ole Miss with Dante Moncrief and LaQuan Treadwell, A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf. It's been tough to get top receivers. Last year was, a good year for State to get those 3 4-star guys from the state, 2 of them from the state of Mississippi, 1 from Alabama. And, of course, this year in the state, the top player overall is a 5-star receiver out of Ackerman, which is about 20 minutes away from Starkville. He's committed to Alabama, but they're working really, really hard to flip him. But it's been tough to recruit receivers to State because there just hasn't been that guy that they could just show off and say, hey, go to the next level for Mississippi State. They just hasn't existed.
Yeah, I covered Fred Ross when he was at John Tyler High School, by the way, back in the day before he committed to Mississippi State. They had a heck of an offense, and he was a major part of that. Brian, really good stuff. Good luck with Jeff Levy, and I say that for him and with the program. Glad he's got the opportunity. You're right. It's time for him to be able to get this and see what it goes. And
Chapin's a good dude. Hope it all works out. Those two, when I see pictures of them together, they're always smiling, which is a good thing, that connection that you brought up, and they have too. Brian Haydad with us. Super Talk, Sports Talk, Mississippi on 365 Sports. Don Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center between Richland Drive and Valley Mills in Waco is where I get my cigars. 48-foot walk-in humidor with all of the great brands, nationally and internationally, the best elite brands around the world. And how about this email from owner Josh Caldwell, who told me about a couple that drove in from Fort Worth to Waco purely based on listening and hearing me talk about Don Humidor. They have a pipe that's a bit of a family heirloom that needed to be repaired. They made the special trip to Don's after listening to 365 Sports, finding out we are one of the only shops left that can help them with the pipe. Not only are they going to fix the pipe, and they did, they also bought a new setup, complete with pipe, stand, and some sample tobaccos. Don Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center, just between Richland Drive and Valley Mills in Waco. 48-foot walk-in humidor, great cigars, even what you need when it comes to smoking pipes and repair, and fresh coffee beans. Don Humidor and Coffee Beans with Cheyenne and Josh in the Town West Shopping Center between Richland Drive and Valley Mills in Waco.
Some say a dog is a man's best friend. But I tell you what, boys, you better think again. 'Cause there ain't nothing better than some cows, pigs, and turkeys too. I love to cover them in sauce down at Rudy's Barbecue.
Bring all your friends to Rudy's for some tasty oak smoke barbecue.
Next in line.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Brad Wilson. Investing is time and experience back to you and your money during today's changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now, here's David Smoke, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoke.
All right, here we go, this 5 o'clock hour. Thanks for the time, Tim Brando, and also Brian Haydad, who covers Mississippi State on the Blake Chapin quarterback era there, and Jeff Levy's first year as head coach. Ari Temkin joins us, Big 12 Radio, joins us on 365 Sports. Paul, Craig, and David Smoke. Ari, thank you very much. How do you, now that we're on the verge of these 16 teams, your thoughts about the new Big 12 and in a way describe what the conference might be?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think you can kind of observe, Smokey, from sort of the talk around the conference. You know, I was listening to the ESPN radio this morning, and they're talking about, if it's a playoff with just SEC teams, I'd be fine. You look at the AP Top 25, and it's littered with Big Ten and SEC teams. And so, I mean, we are going to continually fight an uphill battle for respect and supremacy. And I mean, it's something we're going to have to, as a conference, continually earn. something that I've been talking about kind of throughout the entire offseason is, regardless of how good Texas and Oklahoma have been since the Big 12 started, that was always the litmus test for the rest of the conference. How'd you do against Texas and OU? And that went very far in giving us a good sense of how good each team was in the conference. If you beat Texas, if you beat Oklahoma, that told us how good you were. And so without that anymore, I think the non-conference plays a tremendous role. I think the West Virginia-Penn State game week 1 is as big as it gets for this conference in terms of the perception of the conference. It sucks, but perception is reality in a sense here. And so when you look at all of these non-conference games, save for Utah, Baylor, which is obviously a conference non-conference game, but the ones that include a Big 12 versus a Big 10 or an SEC opponent, those are must-win games for the conference, because when you lose those games, it goes a long way in reinforcing the national narrative around the Big 12.
Ari, how good do two teams have to be record-wise to make sure the Big 12 gets two teams in the playoff?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to what we were just talking about, Paul. I'll say it this way. There's certain non-conference games that if the Big 12 loses, it's very difficult to think that the Big 12 can get multiple bids. And again, it sucks because these teams during a football season ebb and flow. I mean, a football season is a living organism in a sense. It is constantly evolving and changing and growing. And, when you play teams matters a ton. And when you get them on the schedule matters a ton. Who's available and who's healthy, right? So all those things factor in. So it sucks to be like, well, if you lose if West Virginia loses a game week 1, that kills the opportunity for the rest of the conference to be out of the playoffs. But again, it's a constant uphill battle. If you look at the narratives that are already being talked about and formed from a national perspective, the Big 12 is an afterthought. The ACC, in a sense, is an afterthought. But at least the ACC has a Clemson and a Florida State for which the rest of the conference can be judged. Fair or not, that's the reality of the situation now, guys. So, yeah, I mean, I go to that West Virginia-Penn State game. Some of these non-conference opponents are jumbled in my head, but I know there's a non-conference game against Arkansas. Just circle any of those SEC games, and those are really, really important. UCF in Florida, my God, is that a big game for the conference? So any game non-conference that features a Big 12 team, against an SEC or a Big 10 opponent is huge. I mean, look at last year, guys. It wasn't just Baylor losing to Texas State. There were multiple conference games or non-conference games by the Big 12 that were lost to lesser opponents. When you look at the MAC, I mean, there were 3 losses the Big 12 team suffered to the MAC last year, including Iowa State and Ohio, and Cincinnati losing to Miami of Ohio. Like, those can't happen. That is going to kill the perception of this league. So there just isn't that luxury anymore to lose those games. And not only that, but you got to beat the opponents that will help you lift up the conference. But the conference has a leg to stand on from an argument standpoint when we have multiple wins over big-time opponents. Again, West Virginia, Penn State, doesn't get bigger than that. And I think West Virginia can very well beat Penn State. That win would go a long way in making arguments across the season about how good the Big 12 is, because there's no other way for the conference to judge itself in conference. So it's got to be how they do out of conference that kind of sets the tone.
Yeah, Oklahoma State plays Arkansas there in week 2, so that'll be one of those types of games. And I've been saying that for a long time, whether it's realignment or the money or the ratings or what, all that matters is winning. I mean, that's the only way to get your brands hot and get people to pay attention. So yeah, you've got to go and win, and especially win those big games. You mentioned West Virginia. I know a segment of their fans feel, and this is every college fan base, feels disrespected to some degree. They weren't in the preseason AP Top 25. They do have that opportunity against Penn State, though. So, like, they can make that turn into the rankings there. But who do you think is getting disrespected to some degree? What is the storyline in the Big 12 where you think there is a level of disrespect? And perhaps it is West Virginia not getting enough love.
No, I think that's a great call. West Virginia is a great call. I mean, I picked West Virginia to win the conference this year. And I did that simply because, pick a team that you don't expect to win it. This is a league of parity, and it's been a league of parity. The reason I picked Oklahoma State to win the conference last year, and it was a stupid pick when I did it, but it was just basically betting on Mike Gundy. And so I love what West Virginia did last year. I think from an incremental step standpoint, Garrett Green to me is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in college football. I think he's got he's fully now ingratiated in that offense. He developed over the last couple of years. They first brought him out as sort of a run first threat to spell Jarrett Doege years ago, and then we saw his passing game come along. I think he had some learning curve, a little bit of learning curve last year. I mean, he had the Houston game that he basically won the game on a fourth down pass and then chucked his helmet on the ground in celebration, and then that gave him a penalty on the kickoff, which allowed Houston to kind of kick a field goal to win the game. I think that's the kind of thing, it's one of those mistakes you learn from and you get better as a quarterback. And I just have not all quarterbacks do that. I have the confidence, in Garrett Green to do so. I love, their attitude on defense. This has been a very reliable defense under Jordan Leslie now. We've kind of seen it even as they've switched out, players multiple times over now. It's just been an effective defense, and I expect the same this year. They lose two dynamic corners. I think what they brought in the transfer portal, they brought in depth, lots of guys, lots of numbers in the transfer portal. I love what they have at defensive back. And then, you look at West Virginia offensively, just all across the board, their running game, the wide receivers they have. I don't think they've been as stacked in offense under Neil Brown as they are this year. So, West Virginia, my pick to win the conference. To me, it's just pick anybody and make a case for them, because that's really how this league has been. And I think the only certainty is that Utah's not going to win the league just based on the fact that the favorites don't win it. Now, granted, Texas was a favorite to a degree last year, but I don't think they're an overwhelming favorite like Utah is this year. And we did see Texas play Oklahoma State. So, this is definitely a league of parity. It will continue to be a league of parity. So, I think you hit the nail on the head there with West Virginia probably being a team that's not getting enough respect.
Ari Temkin with us, Big 12 Radio on 365 Sports. If you look at the coaches in this conference, a lot of them have come from the lower levels. I say that, FCS, et cetera. Matt Campbell, Chris Kleiman, obviously Lance Leipold, among some others. Your thoughts about the coaches in this conference? Are they I guess, thought of in a really good way, or do you feel like some of them are under the radar?
It's a great question, Smokey. It's because it's so interesting, right? Like, think about Matt Campbell. I mean, Matt Campbell went through a period where the New York Jets wanted to talk to him, right? I mean, he had as high of a stock nationally and in the football world as anybody, right? But now where is his stock? You look at those coaching rankings every year, and it's like, oh, did Matt Campbell suddenly forget how to coach? Is that what happened? Or is he still a really good coach? I think the latter, and Iowa State's probably another team that isn't getting the love and respect that they should be getting, because I think Rocco Becht, like Derek Green, is a very underrated quarterback. Look, for me, a big part of this question and conversation is around AD and coach, and are they in uniform? Are they in lockstep? I think that's more important in college football today than it's ever been, right? I think the draw to get to the bigger school, to get to the bigger conference, isn't as large as it used to be, where it was just a given. And we've seen that already with Chris Kleiman, with Matt Campbell, with even Lance Leipold. And look, they're at different stages of their career, and I'm not going to disparage any coach that does want to move up the ladder and get to the SEC or the Big Ten. But we've seen with those guys the cohesion that they have with their athletic department and the vision that's so important. At my alma mater in Lance Leipold, him and Travis Goff, like from day one, Goff was going to try to build a new stadium and get the support and get fan support. I mean, Kansas has had good football, over the last, it's been a decade plus, but they just didn't have the fan support that basketball always gets. Why is that? Well, they figured it out. They've engaged a fan base in a way that's never been engaged before in football. So, like, those are the kinds of things where it's like when the athletic director and the coach sit down and the hiring's done, it's like, this is where we want to be, and this is how we're going to get there. And as long as they take those steps and they're in agreement, like, that stuff matters so much. So I think this is one of the more underrated conferences from a coaching perspective. When you look at a guy like Matt Campbell, you look at a guy like Chris Kleiman. We know about Mike Gundy and what they have at Utah. I mean, those are the two winningest coaches in college football, aside from Nick Saban over the last over the last decade plus. So this conference, from a coaching perspective, takes a backseat to no one. And look, the proof's in the pudding. Their coaches. I mean, just look at John Haycock, the defensive coordinator at Iowa State. Most teams in college football right now run some variation of that 3-3-5 that John Haycock installed.
Mm-hmm.
That's influence. I mean, most teams are running rush 3, drop 8 into coverage. That's Iowa State. That's influence over the entire sport. So, again, you're probably not going to get the love that this conference deserves from a coaching perspective, but certainly one that is extremely underrated and I think has longevity, where you're going to have coaches that are going to jump. Colin Klein left. He left his alma mater and took another job in the SEC. You're going to have that, but more and more we're seeing the Matt Campbells, the Chris Klimes, Lance Leipold, the Mike Gundy stay and not leave.
Ari, you last year were the one who voted, or is it 2 years, voted for Oklahoma State to win the conference.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, I did that last year. I made that stupid pick.
Well, I mean, but again, they were in the conference title game, right? So you weren't wrong. Did that bravado carry over to this year I agree with you, West Virginia is a criminally underrated team, and I think should have been in the top 25 of the AP this week. But has that bravado taken over to year 2 with West Virginia, since most of us voted for Utah or Kansas State?
Yeah, what happened with Oklahoma State last year is incredible. Like not me picking them to win the conference, but I mean they were 1-2 and about to go to 1-3, rotating 3 quarterbacks. Like what happened to them should have never happened. I went on the radio and was like, I'm sorry I picked Oklahoma State to win the conference. That was a stupid pick. But to me, like the reason I picked them was it's a league of parity. I loved what they had on defense. I loved the weapons they had, and I thought, Alan Bowman's a guy that's had some success in this conference. And so I kind of took a dark horse shot, but knowing that, you can bet on Mike Gundy when everybody's down on him. I mean, he tends to outperform expectations. So for me, it was like, okay, what went into the thought process of picking Oklahoma State, and was that fundamentally sound? It certainly didn't look that way 3 games in, and they got pretty far, but didn't win the conference. West Virginia, to me, they check a lot of boxes. And I just think they're criminally underrated, which to me was like one of the biggest pieces for why I picked Oklahoma State last year. And this just feels like a Neil Brown team. And you heard it from their players in the locker room in the offseason. I heard some quotes from, I think it was one of their pass rushers was talking about that they used to have energy vampires that would just zap the energy of the locker room. And these were guys that were good players. Nobody named names, good players, talented players, but they just killed the locker room in terms of their chemistry. They don't have those guys. This just feels like what happened at Troy for Neil Brown the year before they won 10 games. And, again, with the quarterback situation where it is, he's criminally underrated. It's a guy that I think has shown a lot of growth, and that to me indicates continued growth. But look, you can make the case for a lot of teams. You can make the case for Iowa State. You can make a case for UCF. I mean, genuinely, you can make a case for a lot of teams in this conference. I mean, I'm not going to make the case for Baylor, but I can't wait to see what this offense looks like. It finally feels like the offense fits the personnel. So I can't wait to see the type of offense they're going to be running with Daquan Finn. I'm so again, I'm not going to make the case for Baylor, but just shows you how deep this conference is.
Yeah, it really does feel like more than half the league has a legit shot, if not, the majority of the league has a legit shot to burst out and be that team. The new schools, Ari, it's crazy. 4 schools last year, 4 schools this year, just kind of keeping track of where everybody is. What intrigues you most? Is it Prime in Colorado like it is for a lot of folks? Is it Arizona post Jed Fish? What intrigues you about the new 4? And do you think there is, considering they're coming over from what was a very successful power conference a year ago, do you think there's any type of a learning curve, so to speak?
It's really interesting. It's a great question. I think so, yes, but not just a learning curve for them. I think there's a learning curve for everybody. I mean, this league has basically it's a brand new league, guys. I mean, 16 teams, 8 teams weren't in this conference 2 years ago. So there's a learning curve here for everybody. From the Pac-12, it's interesting because the Pac-12 last year resembled the Big 12 a decade ago. You talk about the top passing offenses in college football, great receivers, great quarterbacks, explosive scores, 65 to 60. I mean, this looked like Baylor, Oklahoma State in 2007. That's what the Pac-12 looked like last year. And so the conference is brand new. I mentioned the 3-3-5 for John Haycock earlier. I think the institution of that in the Big 12 is what changed the offensive schematics of this conference. This is a really good running conference. There are 6,000-yard backs in this conference, and all of them are back, save for Texas, who's no longer in this league. So, I mean, that shows you a lot. This is a downhill power running football conference, because what are you going to do when teams are consistently rushing 3 and dropping 8 into coverage? You're going to run the football on them. So that's what's happened. And now defenses are going back to adjusting. We're seeing a lot more defenses now play heavier on the line of scrimmage because they're trying to adjust for the fact that teams went away from throwing the ball as much as they used to. So for me, like Arizona, I'm very intrigued to see Arizona. They've got arguably the best wide receiver in college football in Ted McMillan. They've got Noah Fafita, who I just absolutely love as a quarterback and as a person. So they've got a ton of offense back. And, everybody bought into Brent Brennan, so you've got to love what they've got there in terms of their new coach. But it is new, and this is a team that wants to throw the ball a ton. And so will they be able to do that when teams are dropping 8 into coverage? Can they run the football when teams force them to run the football? Again, they've got one of the most explosive passing offenses in college football, and Ted McMillan is an absolute stud on the outside. But I think that is a legit question about Arizona. I'm also very intrigued by Utah, just simply because everybody thinks they're going to come into this league and run roughshod over it. I just don't think it'll be that easy, because we're used to this league being you play everybody. The fact that you don't play everybody, that your schedule matters a ton, I think is being completely undervalued here. Scheduling is going to matter a ton. Now, I mentioned West Virginia winning the conference, and I think somebody brought up in the comments, West Virginia does have a really, really tough schedule. That was the one thing where it was I don't know if I should pick them to win the conference because it's tough, but I stuck to my guns. But that's where I think, guys, the biggest factor in winning this conference or getting to the conference title game is your schedule, and nobody's really talking about that. People look at these teams in a vacuum without factoring in not every schedule is the same. They're weighted differently. And then when you play teams matters a ton. Kansas played Kansas State last year with a walk-on true freshman quarterback and Indianapolis Colts GM Chris Ballard's son, Cole Ballard, right? If you played Kansas when they had Jason Bean, or if you played Kansas when they had Cole Ballard, a true freshman walk-on quarterback, totally different dynamic there. So those factors are so large a player that we always undervalue those things in the preseason.
No, I think you're right. I think Utah and K-State both have very beneficial schedules too. That's part of the reason why I think they're getting some love, other than just being pretty good. You mentioned the offenses even from a few years ago, and we actually talked about this at the start of the show. Is there a bigger red flag for somebody who claims to watch the Big 12 than hearing them talk about the lack of defense and the pass-happy offenses from 2014, but they're still talking about it in 2024?
It's unbelievable. It's crazy. It's still, people are still doing it. It's tell me you don't watch the conference anymore without telling me you don't watch the conference anymore. I mean, it really is. This is not. There were 6,000-yard backs in this conference. I mean, I think there was probably a decade without without 6,000-yard rushers, let alone 6 in the same season. And by the way, there could be more this year. There could be more than 6,000-yard backs this year. So yeah, you're totally right. It's the perception of the conference in terms of what it had been versus what it is today is, people tell themselves all the time in terms of, do they actually pay attention to the conference? And we're going to see that. Just listen to the national discourse, guys. Just listen to it, because you're going to hear a lot of people telling on themselves that they're just going to go with the SEC and the Big Ten because that's what they've been told they should be going with, as opposed to actually watching these games. And again, the Big 12, all they do is throw it around and score 70 points a game. No, they don't. That hasn't been the case for a long, long time now in this conference. And here's the other thing too: is inevitably, do we really need to see Penn State lose to Ohio State and Michigan again in a playoff game? Do we really need to see Ole Miss lose to Georgia and LSU again in a playoff game? Because it seems like these teams that get so much hype and love in those conferences are continually losing the biggest games in their conference schedule every year. Penn State's the greatest example of this. The next time they meet Michigan or Ohio State in a big game will be the first time we've seen it in 2 decades. Mm-hmm. So do we really need to see them in I can't wait to get Penn State in the playoff game so they can lose again to Michigan. I can't wait to see Ole Miss in the playoff game so they can lose again to Georgia. So that that is also a part of this that I think people don't when they talk about the playoff needs to be all SEC teams or all Big Ten teams. No, because we've already seen these games played out. Do we really need to see them again?
Ari, great stuff, man. It's great to have you on. We'll be in touch again. I always enjoy being a part of what you do, too, and covering the Big 12. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of the week.
Yeah, appreciate you, Smokey. Appreciate you guys. You guys do a fantastic job. I've always loved what you guys do. And, I wanted to let your audience know that Big 12 Radio is no longer on Sirius XM, but we've got a big announcement coming soon, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, I was going to let you kind of tease that a little bit and look forward to it. I'm glad that's working out. Saw you at Big 12 Media Days. That was great news that you were on the air. Ari Temkin with us, the Big 12 Radio, and again, news around the corner on the distribution of being able to listen to that show every single morning during the week. When we come back, Hall of Fame columnist John McClain, Paul's Top 5 around the corner. And this is 365 Sports. Marco's Pizza, fastest growing pizza brand in America. Go online, marcos.com, and find out what you want delivered, or perhaps you want to go pick it up on the way home from work or wherever you might be going. Pepperoni Magnifico is my favorite. It's loaded with pepperoni. Every piece of the pie you can imagine. And then on top of that, a bunch of Italian sausage. Love that pizza. They have sandwiches and wings and more. Cold drinks if you want them. And by the way, Bob Mock, the owner here in the Waco area, 5 locations: Belmead, China Spring, Robinson, Hewitt, and also in Woodway. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it at marcos.com.
Ghost Hydration is a fully transparent, fully loaded, full-flavored hydration drink that we've all been waiting for. Ghost is caffeine-free with electrolytes, 0 sugar, and low sodium that'll hydrate your body before, during, and after your workout. Consumer loved with authentic flavors, so grab and enjoy a Sour Patch Kids Blue Raspberry and Red Berry, along with the Kiwi Strawberry, Orange Squeeze, or Lemon Lime. Ghost Hydration can truly be used anytime. Remember, it's formulated for sports, but made for life.
Looking to connect with Baylor alums in your area? Baylor Alumni can help. Looking to host a watch party in your city? Baylor Alumni can get you started. Want to step out in your community and serve with other alums? Baylor Alumni is your connection with the university and each other. Let's get started. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, raise your cholesterol, and cause weight gain. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results. So if you're tired of being tired, call or go online at pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $165 a month, including lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, and follow-up visits, compared to $300 or more a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to drive 90 miles one way or the other and fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T has board-certified physician consultations and will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic Low T for increased energy, improvement in sexual desire and performance, mood, concentration, even a decrease in body and belly fat. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, pettycliniclowt.com.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
Hall of Fame columnist John McClain with us most every Tuesday at about 5:30. Joins us on 365 Sports. Craig and Paul, David Smoke. John, thank you very much for your time. There was, and I didn't watch a lot of the preseason. I watched, it kind of was on in the background, so to speak. But was there some sort of everyone trying to make something out of Stephon Diggs and C.J. Stroud on the sideline?
Oh, yeah. That's happened 2 times where Diggs has been involved in something, and the national media has killed him, saying, and fans too on social media, none of them had a clue about what was going on. When Stroud and Diggs wasn't even on the field, Diggs was talking to Stroud about routes and things like that on the sideline, and Stroud was standing there listening to him because that's what they do at practice and in games. And people were like, Diggs being Diggs. The other time there was a fight at practice, and Diggs reached in and pulled the guy off, and everybody's acting like he started it. But he made that bed, and he has to sleep in it. And the Texans love everything about Stephon Diggs right now, but so did Minnesota and so did Buffalo when he first arrived.
John, preseason across, the NFL is underway. Teams have been playing games. What do you look for in the preseason? What are your indicators of this is something that you should pay attention to? Because it is a very difficult resource to quantify how important certain things are because every team does it differently.
Paul, is my 48th preseason, and the first thing I look at are injuries and hope nobody gets hurt. There we got J.J. McCarthy from Minnesota getting a scope on his knee, and it could be something that keeps him out for a year, could be something that keeps him out for a few weeks. And he wasn't going to start right away anyway. And as long as he's there learning, watching and learning, that won't be much of a setback for him. But you hate to see that. And, of course, of all the contract controversy, I know you guys are sick of it because you're in Cowboy country, but I'm tired of hearing about Dak Prescott. I'm tired of hearing about CeeDee Lamb, tired of hearing about Brandon Ayuk, and now Hassan Reddick. Just get on with it. The season starts and the big checks start. Usually that's when guys report, and I expect these issues to be taken care of. And it's weird. I was just telling somebody the Texans have no controversy. And after having dealt with Bill O'Brien, who was always controversial, everything was negative here, even when he was winning 4 division titles and, 5 years, it was still controversial. Then Deshaun Watson, then Jack Easterby, and now it's smooth sailing, and you wonder what could happen. But and it's almost scary because you're looking around. Okay, is something going to happen? That's one way that DeMeco Ryans runs his ship. It's a strict one, and he has a lot of veterans helping him provide leadership. So it's so much nicer than to have to deal with the Cowboys. I had a friend of mine who covers the Cowboys and is a big Cowboy fan, said they've never seen as much apathy in the Cowboys right now, going back to maybe the Dave Campo era. And I think it's probably fans are just tired of hearing about the contracts. They're tired of not doing anything in the off season, wondering who's going to be the running back. And there's a lot of questions, and they're not positive questions. And I think it's imperative that the Cowboys get off to a good start and get people back to thinking and talking about football and not all the issues that are swirling around the organization.
Paul, did he pretty much hit the bullseye right there?
Yeah. It's pretty much it. Like, get it done, don't get it done. Just I don't need to see the whole movie. Just tell me the end. That's.
What just drives me crazy about those is they're going to sign for pretty much what everyone knows the number within $1 million. The guaranteed money might fluctuate a little bit, this and that, but it's all going to end up where they're going to end up. And it's like, I think Jerry loves being in the news and the headlines. I'm so sick and tired of hearing about it. They'll both side. It's going to be fine.
Has Jerry Jones ever lost a player over money he really wanted to keep? I don't think so. And he's not going to lose this big 3.
John, we talk about C.J. Stroud a lot, rightfully so. We ask you about Jalen Petrie a lot. I mean, I know it seems strange to ask you about a guy who's the defensive rookie of the year and Pro Bowler as a rookie, all-rookie team, everything else. But what's it been like to cover Will Anderson and just kind of watch him and hear about him doing his thing over the past year?
Craig, it's interesting that you asked about Anderson because there's a great story out on him by Tyler Dunn, who has a website called Go Long. And I think you can read the story once without having to getting the paywall. And he came down here and spent time with Anderson, and he's got a fascinating story about him when he was growing up to help him get to where he is today. And I was so impressed with it. Anderson is an upstanding guy, team leader, plays his butt off. He's everything you want in a player. And to help take pressure off of him, they let Jonathan Grenard go, their best pass rusher, and signed Danielle Hunter. Grenard went to Minnesota. Hunter came from Minnesota. So they think Danielle Hunter on the opposite side of Will Anderson Jr. will keep people from double teaming Anderson all the time. But Stroud gets all the attention, and it is weird. It's offensive and defensive rookies of the year, but Anderson, I guess it's because you don't get any sacks right now. You don't make any hard hits. He hadn't played in the preseason. Don't know if he will, but I can't wait to see him because he's already a really good player. And he's got a chance, Craig, to be a perennial double-digit sack guy.
John, with the change in the preseason, this is not the first year. There's not as many games. It's been that way. More games now in the regular season. Does it change now, if there are the 3 games, of how people get themselves prepped and ready for that game 1 in September?
Absolutely, David. There was a great thing yesterday. Bill Belichick was interviewed a long time by Pat McAfee. And Pat just kind of asked one question, and then Bill just took it and ran. It was about preseason games, practices, joint practices, and it was so good that McAfee didn't say a word. I've never seen Pat McAfee that quiet for that long because Belichick just took it over. And one of the things he talked about, it doesn't do any good to get a guy 5 or 6, 7 plays in a game. He said you want to have it in a joint practice where you can control everything. You can't control things. And when they go to 18 games and 2 preseason games, I would imagine teams are going to have joint practices with 2 teams. Now, what you can't have is these constant fights, and that's why the NFL has instituted fines. Belichick said he always told the officials that came to joint practices, and they started doing them when he was with the Giants under Parcells, is tell the officials treat it exactly like a regular season game. Kick them out. If you get them out. And I thought it was hilarious that somebody pointed out today that Rod Mayo has a philosophy in New England. If you are a starter and you get involved in a fight, you got to play the whole game. And then somebody wrote, well, that's Sean McVay's rule. Somebody else writes, oh, yeah, I don't remember Aaron Donald playing the rest of the game after he was swinging his helmet last year in the preseason. But things you look for in preseason mostly are new guys, like Kamari Lassiter, the Texans' top pick. They love the guy. He's been tremendous throughout the off-season program, but he's been banged up since preseason began. And he'll play when they play the Giants on Saturday. But I think you look at young guys, and then when you bring in free agents, you want to see how well they adapt to the system. But mostly you do it in camp, in practice, not in games.
John McClain with us, Hall of Fame columnist. Football season right around the corner. How many years now for you covering the NFL?
48 years.
48.
48.
Do you still get the juices flowing when it comes up to when the season's about to start?
It's like when I went to Crestview Elementary, Tennyson Junior High, and Richfield High School. Every year I was so excited for the first day because I wanted to see who was in my class and who I sat next to. And that's the way I still feel about the start of the NFL season. I get excited for the start of the season and then the playoffs. I hadn't had a chance for a while for the playoffs. And maybe the Texans will bomb out and they'll go from first to worst like they went from worst to first. I don't think so, even though they play a much tougher schedule, but it's so much more fun here. People are really excited about the Texans. And while we were down on the Astros early in the season, the Astros are on a roll.
Yeah.
Too, so there's a lot of positivity down here about our professional sports teams. And, of course, the start of the NFL season signifies the start of the college season. And I can't wait for the start as well and to see if Baylor's going to be better in the newly aligned Big 12.
John, what was your favorite Olympic moment and why? And was it breakdancing?
No, Paul, it wasn't. I'm sure that was yours. Consider you used to be a break dancer extraordinaire. I bet your listeners didn't know that. There were several moments to me when the Australian woman won the gymnastics, and on the medal stand, Childs, who had her medal revoked, and Biles did that thing where they got down on their knees, and I don't even know how to describe it. And then Sydney McLaughlin running away from everybody when she got the baton on the 4x100. And I'm a sucker for anybody standing on the stand, on the podium, crying when their national anthems played. And I'm thinking Scotty Scheffler, who's made millions and millions and millions this year, and may make millions more with the money that's about to be paid out, staying up there and crying for a guy like that. It just shows you how much it means to all of them. And then the great basketball games. I thought the Olympics were fantastic. I didn't watch all of it, but I watched a lot of it. I always hated the end. I thought the closing ceremony was terrible in Paris. I thought it was just, they did an awful job. And I still think, couldn't you get somebody besides Dr. Dre to come out and grab his package? He's a little old for that. And couldn't you get somebody? I know Billie Eilish is popular, and having Flea dancing around in a skirt with his shirt off, couldn't they get somebody better than them, considering they're going to Hollywood? A lot of people didn't like the Tom Cruise thing, but I'm thinking, geez, at his age, doing the things he does, my God. And there's not a bigger star right now than Tom Cruise. And what I worry about L.A., they're going to make it so much about the stars and the celebrities, less about the athletes. And I hope that doesn't happen. But the games at Paris, I thought were the best I've ever seen, but I just didn't like the closing ceremony.
The Olympic men's basketball gold medal game, I think, received what might have been nearly 30 million viewers.
And the women were on early in the morning, and the women had extraordinary viewership. People said, well, if Caitlin Clark, give me a break. Clark would have been on the bench, and she wouldn't even got in a couple of those games because they were so close. Now, she'll be in probably the next 4 or 5 Olympics. In fact, Diana Taurasi's won 6 gold medals is just amazing. And how much pride they take in representing their country. I wish they were going on another, at least till the football season starts.
Yeah, another week of it. And I watched a bunch, especially the track and field, and eventually just, you mentioned McLaughlin, the 4x100 men. They just, golly, it's like it's just throw up on yourself after another. And all the relay teams did great, but that one can't get out of its own way.
And the 4x4, same thing.
Yeah, no.
Having Tara Lipinski,
the men are the 4x2.
And Johnny Weir involved in the closing ceremony. They're Winter Olympic people.
Yeah.
They were terrible. Jimmy Fallon was terrible. So, I got to sit next to Mick Jagger and stay with the French president. And I understand it's because of the NBC promotion, but Mike Tirico was fabulous. But the NBC was embarrassed with the people they put on that last day other than Tirico.
John, thank you, buddy. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys. Second.
That's John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist with us on 365 Sports. I'll say this. I remember when Mike Tirico first started at ESPN Radio, the Super Bowl, Century Plaza Hotel in L.A., Cowboys and Bills the first time, and he was setting up a table across the walkway from me down in the media area. There weren't many people there, and Mike Tirico was putting together a table like we would, with a banner over the table, whatever you want to call it, a cloth over the table, doing the show. And he now is the most, what is the word? He is now the most multi-talented anchor when it comes to sports. And there's a lot of them, but Ernie Johnson's a great, but as far as he can go from equestrian to the 4x100 meter.
He had one big mistake, though.
I saw the flag.
So, he
Zimbabwe.
Thought that one of the French basketball players had a Palestine flag over his shoulders, which is understandable if you saw it, but he assumed that, and it was actually for Martinique, which was not at all Palestine, and so he had to come. He came back though. He apologized for the mistake, but other than that, I thought he was Mike Tirico. You know what to expect, and that's why he's like the sturdiest. Put him in any spot type of guy as you're referring to, and yeah, he does an excellent job with that stuff.
Remember now, they hired him.
I have to say this because I'm married to one. Palestine's in East Texas.
No, Adrian Peterson.
Sorry. No, I actually do know that, but I was thinking of, do I say Palestinian and so that's but
Palestinian.
I do know that.
So and remember now, he was hired. Al Michaels was the voice of the NFL on Sunday Night Football. He was hired knowing it was going to take a couple of years, and slowly but surely he took over everything.
I want Mike Tirico to do baseball games so badly.
I bet he'd be great, yeah.
Because I think the way his voice is and the way, like...
The pacing.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. I think he'd be really good at base. I mean, he's good at everything he does, but I did watch a lot of Olympics while I was away and really enjoyed a ton of different things and so many different, I mean, each day kind of had a highlight, honestly, for Team USA, but by the end of it, I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. As much as I love the track stuff and gymnastics with the U.S. women and things like that, for like all of America to be able to be Steph Curry fans for a few moments, for a couple of games, or for a few games, and like see what and enjoy what Warriors fans get to enjoy. Like, there was nothing I wanted to know more after the gold medal game than, like, I wanted to hear from – KD has already played with him, but from the other guys who, like, have to face that in the regular season and have been on the receiving end of that in massive games and probably massive losses in a lot of cases. But, like, to be able to root for that when he's on fire the way that he was and making the clutch, most crazy shots imaginable, like, just the rush of that. To have him on Team USA and to be able to root for that, like, Warriors fans – so spoiled for what they've been able to enjoy over the years, and to be able to finally like root for him and on my team, so to speak. I just thought that was a really cool moment from America, like to be able to embrace how great he is and great that team was.
What he did in the last like minute or so of the game, in all of the games he's ever played, as well as he shot the ball, one of the best pure shooters all time. That's only like the first or second time in his career that he had hit like that many threes in that amount of time.
Hey, the one he made over
in that stretch.
The one he made over Wemby was, and that's going to be an all-time sports picture of the photograph of that. It was great, and I came away from that game so thrilled for two reasons. One, we won the gold medal. Steph was great. It was just fun to watch. There's like Anthony Edwards is fun to watch. I'm kind of in a bit of a renaissance with my NBA watching. And as a Spurs fan, Victor Wembanyama's going to be a problem, man.
Yeah,
he's going to be a big problem.
Yeah, no, he's very good. The future of France basketball is
pretty good.
Very, very, very bright because they're only starting to put more and more guys in the league. But yeah, to see, I know people are split on LeBron and certain players or whatnot, but it's like to just. I hope you appreciated the greatness that was there with Curry and LeBron and KD and the contingent like that. But, yeah, to see Steph do his thing and to have, like, all of America be able to root for that on that type of a stage with those types of stakes, I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world because everybody was just so happy. Like, this is incredible. You get to root for this, you know?
Yep. And they were dead in the water against Serbia. And a couple of guys started mouthing off, and the next thing you know, Durant went off, and then Curry went off, and LeBron went off. And it kind of like it brought it out. Just let the sleeping dog lie.
It was like with MJ.
Don't wake up. Don't poke the bear.
Don't talk trash to Michael Jordan because odds are like you're going to be on the receiving end of some retribution. And so, yeah, that was – and Steph responded to that with some pretty funny, prodding of the crowd and guys who I guess were trash talking him. But, yeah, that was incredible. It was a fun couple of weeks. It really was. I enjoyed this year's Olympics and way better than the COVID era Olympics that we got the last time around.
I didn't watch much the first week or so, and then I was able to get locked in with the track and field especially. When we come back, Paul Catalina and his every Monday through Friday top 5.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome back. This is Paul Catalina's Top 5, and I'm Paul Catalina. Who else could I be? Because it's my Top 5. Who am I? Why am I here? That's why I'm telling you, to give you a Top 5 list. We continue on through our Top 25 offenses today, brought to you by TexasBeefHouse.com. Crowdsourcing a new one for next week. Garrett and I are going to build the best college football team, player for player, 22 positions on offense and defense, and kicker, punter, head coach. That should get us to 25. If you have somebody you think should be on the list, send it to my Twitter account, at Paul Catalina, and I will put them in contention. I will do the research to build the best college football team, so please do that. And please go to TexasBeefHouse.com, check out the auction, bid on beef, see when that's coming up, and use our promo code 365sports for a discount at checkout. Let's dive in. Number 20 on offense, USF. Byron Brown is the quarterback there now, and they are going to be lit up on offense. Defensively, we don't know yet. But this is a team on the rise in Tampa. And UCF fans, don't get mad at me. Don't get mad at me. I know that we're peeps. I know we're bros. You're on the list a lot later. You're in a better part in the list. Just letting you know. Even though you guys are not technically rivals anymore. Even though you're always going to be. Just saying. But USF should be a really fun offense to watch this year. They've made some gains, and it looks like they're a team that's kind of figured out where they are in life now of, hey, we're in Tampa. There's good high school football players. By just walking outside at USF or Raymond James and going, football players, and they'll be like, yeah, what's up? Like, just go get them in Tampa, in that area. There's tons of them, and they've got a very prolific offense that is going to be coming at you this year. Number 19. Rhett Lashley and the SMU Mustangs. The Ponies are going to light it up on the scoreboard, and it will be fun to watch it this year in the ACC. Now, will they maybe take a slight dip down in numbers because the ACC is better than the American? Yeah, maybe, but their schedule for the first year with the defenses they're going to face isn't really that daunting. Not to say that's not going to be harder, but as far as putting up yards and numbers and all the things that offenses do, they should be able to continue to do that this year, especially with Preston Stone healthy and back for another year and getting better and better and better with each snap. They always seem to have a skill position player, a wide receiver, running back who kind of comes out of the shadows and says, hey, y'all forgot about me. James Prochet comes to mind when I think about SMU. Rashee Rice, in spite of his troubles, kind of, okay, why was this guy toiling the American? No offense to the American, but he was that good. And SMU is pumping some money into that deal, as we know. Number 18, Notre Dame. Some lists had them higher, some lists had them lower. I kind of split the difference. I think Riley Leonard will improve this. I think wide receiver-wise, they've gotten a whole lot better. Chris Mitchell comes in from FIU. He's a reception machine. Jaden Greathouse, another year in the system. Bo Collins is there. They have other guys, young players that they're super excited about. They're always good at tight end. And again, Riley Leonard is there behind a really good offensive line that maybe doesn't have quite the depth, but still the four starters that they have remaining after they lost their left tackle last week should be very good. They should run the ball well, and this should be a very, very good offense in South Bend this year. Riley Leonard, Riley Leonard, Riley Leonard. Number 17, Arizona, Noah Fafita, Ted McMillan. I can stop there. I don't need to say anything else of why this offense will be good. And yes, they're losing Jed Fish, and they're starting anew with a new coach, with Brent Brennan. No big deal. No big deal to me. I think Arizona will be just fine when it comes to moving the ball on offense. They've got playmakers. They've got a really good quarterback. They've got really good wide receivers. Again, I can end this conversation with Noah Fafita, Ted McMillan. That's all I need to say about this offense. But I said a little bit more. But Noah Fafita, Ted McMillan. Let's keep it efficient, shall we? Number 16, Florida State. Now you say, Paul, you usually have them higher. You're such a homer. Whatever your debate on this. They've lost so many offensive playmakers from last year. Jordan Travis, Trey Benson, Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman, Jaheim Bell. I'm sorry, I'm going to cry. But they've lost a lot of production. And the guys they have coming back are good. Lawrence Toafili at running back, really good player. They have Roydell Williams, who should help them get a lot of first downs. They've got an offensive line that's as deep and as good as it's been since the national championship year in 2013. They've got Kyle Morlock at tight end, who played a little bit last year and is another year in the system. Plus, Landon Thomas, the number one tight end recruit in the country, is there. DJ Uiagalelei steps in. Now, we saw his offensive numbers tick up last year under a better offensive coach in Jonathan Smith at Oregon State. Remember, when he was at Clemson, he had Brandon Streeter as his offensive coordinator, a guy who is no longer there and was replaced by Garrett Riley. So, while he did struggle a little bit at Clemson and did not reach his full potential, let's see him in Mike Norvell and Alex Atkins' system this season and see how he improves. Wide receiver, the biggest question for the Seminoles. A lot of athleticism, not a lot of production so far, but that is going to be a question for them. But I still think they're a top 20 offense in the country. And with their defense, that should balance out nicely and keep them in contention, if not winning the ACC title this year. That's going to do it for this top 5. We're back to wrap it up now.
All right, Paul, thank you very much. The top 5 is getting sponsored, as he says, by TexasBeefHouse.com. That package to me came in the mail today in a big styrofoam box, and I can't wait. I put out one of the steaks that came in just to kind of see how it is, and thanks to Samantha Duvall and also the Duvall family at TexasBeefHouse.com. All right, for Paul Catalina and Craig Smoke, thank you, Garrett Ross, running the mothership, weaving in and out of all of what we do. Jack McKenzie, of course, with what he does. And Emery Winter is already editing up what we have coming up on 365 Sports tonight on the CW. If you haven't already, please click the like and the subscribe button, or if you haven't subscribed, please do, and even spread the word. We're back at it again tomorrow at 3. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoke, I'm David Smoke. Thanks to all of our amazing sponsors. This is 365 Sports. Good night.